My name is Lex, and this week on Spidey Signals, me and my co-host Alex discussed Brian Michael Bendis, Morgan Gendel, and Marcia Griffin's Spider-Man, the new animated series, trance music, and polyamorous Peter Parker. Get ready to descend into madness, because it's time for Spidey Signals. Welcome back to Spidey Signals, the podcast where two guys with the same name talk about Spider-Man. I'm Lex.
And I'm Alex.
Last week, we had a kind of a short episode. We talked about the amazing adventures of Spider-Man, the theme park ride, and we also talked about a couple of other things, the No Way Home trailer, the freshman year announcement, and stuff going on in this particular podcast. It was nice to have a shorter episode.
A breather. After all the slew of content that we've covered in the past few months now, I find I keep looking at my calendar and I keep realizing how close to the end of this we are with each passing episode, but it's been fun. I've had a great time with the second season, and that kept going this week.
Yeah, now we've got we specifically have a lot to cover this episode because instead of the when we did Spectacular where we split seasons in half, this is a whole 13 episode season of a TV show, and it's the only one. And really, I'm not surprised that it was the only one.
Yeah, it exists in a weird spot. We're gonna get into it and talk about it all in a bit. But with that said, usually with content that I haven't seen before, I'll look for a really well detailed synopsis somebody else wrote on the internet. Believe it or not, nobody gives a shit enough about this show to have done that. So I found bare bones ones for each episode, and then built what I could off the backs of those. So we'll talk about the plot at large of the episode, but maybe not every specific individual scene like we had more breathing room for on the Spectacular episodes.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I did my own research, in fact, and I did find one guy who has done individual episode by episode reviews of these. But it's sort of everything we've watched so far, and I think everything we're gonna watch for the rest of this, and I'm including fucking Turn Off the Dark, because people know Turn Off the Dark. It's that Spider-Man Broadway musical
It's
that everybody got injured on. It's infamous, but nobody talks about this show because I mean, and I'm just gonna say it now. Out of everything we've talked about so far, and I'm including Turn Off the Dark and the 77 TV movie. This is the most morbidly fascinating thing I've watched ever, and it's maybe even the most insane Spider-Man thing I've ever seen. I
can agree with that. Even having seen relatively recently Toei Spider-Man for the first time, more or less through, this is such a starkly. It stands in such stark contrast to everything else that existed up to this point. If people thought Raimi was grimdark, this is fucking incredibly just weird.
I don't even know if I'd call it grimdark. And I mean, with Toei, there's that's part of the sort of tokusatsu tradition, is that it's kind of over the top and lots of weird shit going on.
Of course,
that comes with the territory. But this is just an entirely new breed of crazy that we're talking about. And the weirdest part is that I like the first half of it. But we're going to get into it. If you don't know, or if you didn't read the title, we're talking about Spider-Man, the new animated series. This was a cartoon that only had 13 episodes. It was released from July 11th to September 12th of 2003 on MTV. So that means, it's on cable. It has opportunities to be a little bit more dark than something like Spectacular, which was on a Disney which was a kids cartoon. This is a bit more aimed towards teenagers. And also along with that, we found out when we were getting ready to record this episode was that all the episodes, if you watch them in release order, like when they first came out, they're in the wrong order. So thankfully Wikipedia has them in the correct storyline order, so we had to watch them. We had to figure that out. The torrent that I downloaded thankfully had everything in the correct order, so I didn't have to worry about that, because it's the correct order on the DVDs. But it's really weird why they would do that.
Yeah, I had to watch this across multiple sites because the site that I use mostly to watch like cartoons only had specific episodes. YouTube only had specific episodes. So even past that, I should have looked at the Wikipedia article or a DVD case or something to get a semblance of an idea. Because when I watched it, I saw parts of it out of order, and I saw an episode where Max was still alive
Yeah.
after the Electro thing. So I was like, okay, what the fuck is going on here? And I had to look into it further, and I was like, oh well, that fixes that. I saw an episode with Indy in it before they introduced Indy.
Oh my god. Okay. Yeah, this show is a mess already. But this show was developed by three people: Brian Michael Bendis, who is the famed writer of the Ultimate Spider-Man cartoon, the Ultimate Spider-Man comic book, who has made creative decisions that I haven't necessarily agreed with, but it's Brian Michael Bendis.
Yeah.
Morgan Gendel and Marcia Griffin. So the three of them basically created the series for TV. There are a lot of directors and writers for this show, so I'm just gonna bang them off right now. These episodes were directed by Tim Eldred, Vincent Edwards, Adu Padin, Brandon Vietti, and Alan Caldwell. These episodes were written by Morgan Gendel, Rick Suvale, Greg Johnson, Todd Felderstein, Marcia Griffin, Tracy Forbes, Brian Michael Bendis, Whip Lipsy, Scott Lipsy, and Stephen Creosery. I don't even think I'm pronouncing that right, but I give it my best shot. I was
You
a little
made
bit.
half of those up.
Whip Lipsy is not a real name. That's
That's Wild Whip's real identity.
I was about to say that's Wild Whip's alter ego. As for our cast, we've got kind of a stacked cast. There's a lot of big names here, which I didn't really expect going in. I mean, I knew a couple of them. We've got Neil Patrick Harris as Peter Parker / Spider-Man. Lisa Loeb, the musician, as Mary Jane Watson. Ian Ziering as Harry Osborn. Angel Brooks as Indra Indy Diamanchi. Keith Carradine as our man, J. Jonah Jameson. Rob Zombie as Dr. Kurt Connors / the Lizard.
Fuck yeah.
Let's fucking go. Eve as Cheyenne / Talon. Michael
Which,
Clark.
if I can just say real quick, worst fucking performance on the show. Absolutely, hands down, the worst.
I
voice
wouldn't
actor
go
on the
that
show
far.
is he.
She's all right. I don't even know what to say. I give her a pass. I like that episode. Michael Clark Duncan as Wilson Fisk / the Kingpin. Jeffrey Combs, our man Jeffrey Combs as Dr. Zellner. And who would have thunk Ed Asner, the guy who would go on to play Uncle Ben in The Spectacular Spider-Man as the cop, whose name I can't remember.
Yeah, just the officer.
The one cop that has a speaking role.
And Clancy Brown and Cree Summer as literally everybody else.
Clancy Brown, Cree Summer, fucking Virginia Madsen is in this show. Let me go.
I swear to God, there's an episode where like there's three goons in succession that are doing something, and all three of them are just Clancy Brown doing the same voice, even though they're visibly different.
Clancy Brown. Fucking obviously Stan Lee is there. Kathy Griffin, Kathy Griffin is there. Keith David,
of course.
Gina Gershon, Tara Strong, Devon Sawa.
All over the fucking place.
It's kind of like a who's who of, like Spectacular, it's kind of a who's who of early 2000s voice cast.
Distinctly no Toby, distinctly no Kirsten, distinctly no Franco.
And you know what? Honestly, thank God.
Of course.
If you've played the Raimi Spider-Man games, you know that Tobey Maguire is not a great voice actor.
I gotta deliver these pizzas. Mr. Aziz is gonna kill me.
I give late to class, Dr. Connors.
It's wonderful. It's great.
It's something. Alex, do you have any personal experiences with this program?
Fleetingly brief ones, yes. Well, maybe even just one. It's really weird to me that I didn't watch this growing up because I had cable in spurts. I didn't have like a reliable way to watch TV. Mostly on weekends at my grandma's house I could, but like even then I didn't keep up with cable listings enough to know that this show existed. When I was maybe I had to be 7 or 8, so this was would have been when it was airing, like well into it. I remember catching the middle of what turned out to be the Sword of Shikata episode. I remember MJ entering a room and seeing a guy's severed head on the ground and running away. And I just remember changing the channel and being like, well, that sucks. And just like never thinking about it again. I looked into it and found out what it was, pre-watching it for this, but like I caught a brief moment of it, enough to remember that I think this kind of sucks, and just moved on. Which is the entirety of my personal experience up to the point of watching it for the podcast.
Yeah. As for my personal experiences, I have none. I was a little too young to be watching MTV at that point. But again, it's one of those things that if you're a Spider-Man fan, you've at least heard of it if you haven't seen it. Um, it's it's one of those things that like we said earlier, nobody talks about. It's kind of, I would almost say, the black sheep of the Spider-Man cartoons. Even fucking
Yeah,
Spider-Man Unlimited has a pretty small but vocal fan base. You hear people talk about Spider-Man Unlimited.
yeah. Even if you don't hear the positives, you hear most people just bring it up to say, "Oh, the cape sucks," but like that's people remember it. People talk
Spider-Man
about it.
Unlimited, and the more recent cartoons, there's not a whole lot of fans for those. But they exist. People have heard of them because they have Disney money, so they get promoted a lot. They get backed. It's like it existed between, and this is sort of the era where the Raimi movies are getting, like, this is their prequel moment where they're getting a lot of a retrospective praise
Hmm.
from especially people on the internet. But even during this sort of Raimi fever, nobody's talking about this show. It's like it
Right.
doesn't exist.
It is steeped. Well, we'll get into its Raimi associations and connotations, but it's for what it's supposed to be. It barely feels like what it is. They make
Yeah.
references to the events of the first movie in passing just about every episode, but it feels so disconnected from the spirit of the movies that it feels like its own separate thing by and large.
Yeah, this is just like incredibly weird. And even with we're gonna get into this later, but even with the even if you like recombine them into their correct viewing order of the show, there's not a whole lot of overarching narratives here. It's kind of more episodic than I really expected it to be. It's
For sure.
There's a lot to break down here, but there's, for me at least, when I watched this show, there were two different phases. There was the first 6 episodes, which I would call the good episodes, and then episodes 7 through 13, which I would call the descent into madness, uh, where just the most insane shit starts happening. And I'm gonna, again, I don't want to spoil too much, but I'm gonna say this right now: maybe the most insane ending to a Spider-Man thing I've ever seen.
I think I might agree. Spectacular. The pacing is what made it insane. If they had let it breathe a little bit more, there's not so much crazy about the idea of Norman exploding and then, funeral and talking and that being the ending. But it's the fucking fact that everything that happens at the end of Spectacular happens in about a minute and a half. Even expand that out to maybe even just 3 or 4 minutes, and that would have maybe had like a wow, you remember the ending is spectacular, but the way we remember it is fucking crazy and fast and rushed. The ending to this, without getting too spoilery yet, is just it's so radically fucking dour and
The
one
show
note
ends on
and
a
final.
two-parter, but it feels so fast.
Yeah, it's nuts, and the writing just completely it's not consistent. And I guess I'll talk about specifics of that more when we get to that final episode, but it's just by the end of the show, it's like fuck it, whatever, sure.
Yeah, exactly. But enough talk. We've got to fucking dive into these 13 episodes. So, Alex, do you want to
Absolutely.
take us through the plot of these?
Sure. So, Spider-Man, the new animated series. This is a continuation of Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. pre Spider-Man 2, pre Spider-Man 3. Those aren't in the pipeline yet. This is 2003, so it was probably made mostly in 2002. This is sometime after Sam Raimi's Spider-Man. Norman Osborn is dead. Peter and Harry are living in an apartment in college. I think it's at some point in the show, it's the 1 year anniversary, so we're probably just a good amount of months away from the events of the movie at this point.
Yeah, something like that.
And every episode starts with a cold open, and after some time, we break into the theme song, which I love the theme song.
It's like fucking dope trance music. Like
It's some weird ass Euro beat.
the
It's
whole soundtrack for this show kind of rocks. There's like obviously the trance stuff. There's like ambient pieces, especially I think there's one in the Kingpin episode that I really really like.
mhm.
Uh, I think it's like 12 minutes into that Kingpin episode. That's like a really nice ambient piece. There's like some little vocal bits that I like. The soundtrack for this show is like the one like the 77 show. The one truly unequivocally great thing about this is I love the soundtrack for this show.
Yeah, it's a not to be cliche or anything, but it is very it's a time capsule of like what they thought was cool on MTV in 2003.
Oh yeah.
Remarkably so, like such a very out of left field music for an MTV Spider-Man. You would think that Sony, the same people that are responsible for the emails, would have had a radically different like MTV Spider-Man take, but I will take the trance Eurobeat dance floor shit we got because I remember it. I can hear it in my head and it's great. I love it.
Better that than new metal or mall punk.
Press this shit on vinyl and I will buy it, Sony, because I'm an idiot. Anyway, this show begins with our cold open. The first episode, Heroes and Villains, at a protest that is breaking out at Empire State University. As it's been announced that Villeroy Towers, a local housing community, is going to be torn down, leaving residents homeless. We cut to Peter Parker, college freshman, who is taking pictures of the event and of MJ because he's a photographer.
MJ, who
You
is
know,
now a goth girl for some reason.
yeah, her model is just so weirdly caricatured, and her neck is like pencil thin, and her
The
head is so
animation in this
bulbous.
show is really weird.
All the character models are bizarre. Harry's blonde, and Norman is blonde in all the photos that we see of him and
Just like
paintings.
it's Spectacular. This is a sequel to Spectacular.
It's bizarre. J. Jonah Jameson is just J. Jonah Jameson, as
Yeah,
far as that's
I
concerned.
I
Connors
think
looks completely different. All the Flash looks completely different. It's very loose with the interpretations of the characters.
I think the thing I realized like halfway through watching is that all the fight scenes are like, hand animated by CGI animators, but all the dialogue scenes, it's all mocap.
Mm-hmm.
So
It's very obvious.
it's very obvious because it's all like obviously you can tell it's based on the animations of real people moving around. It's just there's no consistency, and
Absolutely.
it's like morbidly fascinating. Uh, yeah, it's strange.
During the protest and while Peter is doing his photography, a disgruntled janitor brushes past him and takes the time to start a little verbal confrontation and give exposition about how the protest sucks, but how he also wants to remain at Villeroy Towers despite being on the side of the protesters. There's a message in this episode, and it's really muddled because this guy is such a dick about, oh, this protest sucks, and I'm not getting involved with the protest, and they're idiots for being the way they are, but he wants the exact same thing they do. So I don't know. He's just grumpy.
Who
Um,
knows?
After this exchange, Harry and MJ meet up with Peter, and Peter mentions wanting to sell pictures of this protest and of the new museum exhibit that's being displayed in town later to the Bugle. There's a little ceremony where the museum is receiving a ruby or some large gemstone, where the antagonist of the episode, Turbo Jet, shows up and
A
steals the
new
gem.
villain.
He's like a jet man. He's like kind of like the monster from Spider-Man. What was his name? Air Bomber, kind of. He
He's
looks like
like
a space suit
he's like
man.
he's obviously I think based off of Rocket Racer, who's an actual
Yes, he
villain in
is.
the comics. But that's the thing, is that this show has a lot of new villains that
Yeah,
are original,
tons. There's a
which I
handful of
like.
classic comic ones. Maybe predominantly new villains. I want to say, thinking about
Yeah, I
it.
want to say it's mostly new villains, which
Hmm.
I think it's interesting. I think there's a reason behind that, which we'll talk about in the trivia. But I like to see new villains.
They did their best with what they had, and what they had was Turbo Jet. He's like a spacesuit guy with a big, fast, speed of sound jetpack, and he shows up and takes the jewel and says later, and Turbo jets away. Uh, in the ensuing chaos and a chase, a truck overturns and almost kills a bunch of civilians before Spider-Man stops it. This is our first time outside of the theme song, like seeing Spider-Man, and I like the suit a lot. It's very Bagley. If it wasn't drawn by Bagley, it's very very Bagley inspired, and Bagley is my favorite Spider-Man artist. So I gotta say I like the suit a lot.
It's like yeah, it's like Bagley meets the original Raimi from 2002 suit.
I should asterisk that and say Bagley draws my favorite suit. Bagley's not my favorite Spider-Man artist. Um, his faces are weird. I don't know. There's a great little moment after this where civilians pelt Spider-Man with garbage as he's looking for Turbo Jet. He's pulling the old, "Hey, anybody seen a villain this height?" Blah blah blah. And they're sick of his shit, and they just start throwing Slurpee cups at him and shit. It's great.
This lady's throwing her groceries at him, which is really funny.
The news, as always, is painting Spider-Man as a crook and trying to make him look partially responsible for the Turbo Jet incident. However, residents have been getting a lot of money to support their cause because Turbojet is pulling a reverse, or rather a Robin Hood type thing, and he takes the things that he's stealing and he takes the money that he gets from fencing the goods and donates it to the defense fund for Villeroy Towers. The residents begin to kind of see him as a hero, like a Robin Hood figure. They're all for him to the point where even MJ is like, "Yeah, I think he's great," even though he's like a criminal that almost overturned a truck and killed people. Um, Turbojet is doing all of this, of course, by committing crimes and refuses to let anyone stop him, not even Spider-Man. We get another little moment where Harry is still like vocally expositing that he blames Spider-Man for his father's death.
I hate
Back
Spider-Man.
pretty much every episode he goes, "Spider-Man, that murderer, I hate him." He sounds just like Diedrich Bader to me in this show, or maybe like H. John Benjamin.
There's like specifically, I don't remember which episode it is, but it's one of the later ones where he is like, there's like some sort of thing that happens, or Spider-Man does some kind of thing, and then Harry just goes murderer,
Yeah,
like
yeah, and like MJ has to like hold him back.
like Dr. Claw from Inspector Gadget. He's so mad about Spider-Man. It's really
Yeah,
funny.
it's really good. Peter and MJ have a stupid little moment where they're like doing a will they won't they kiss thing, but they're just adjusting a TV angle. There's a boardroom meeting where Harry is told by Oscorp suits that he needs to announce that the science center that they're going to construct for ESU is going to be on the bulldozed Villeroy Towers property. And they like, do a little devil on his shoulder thing and tell him that it's an opportunity to do good. And here's a Galileo telescope that your father gave us to
Your
donate to be
father.
sold. My dad liked Galileo? Wow, I didn't know he gave a shit. Whoa. And the way this scene goes, these characters, to me, when I first watched this episode, I watched a few of these episodes a couple times just to get everything I could down.
Yeah.
But these characters almost feel like they're gonna come back, and it's like, ooh, Harry's being influenced by the board. What's that? They never fucking show up again. I think, right? That they never. That's never a thing again. Where the
I
board is making Harry make a decision. They're
Yeah,
just,
literally just never show up again.
but they're painted to be like sinister. Like this is a good thing, Harry. Do this, but nothing ever becomes of that. So they're just fucking weird. I don't know.
Most of the plot lines in this show just get dropped.
Right after this, also, this only happens in the pilot episode too. Spider-Man has like an Emperor's New Groove talk to the camera moment where he's
Yeah,
like
he does.
he
He has a
puts everything on pause and he's like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! What's going on? This? Whoa, that's so weird."
he's got a vlog, a Spider-Man vlog moments.
And he does like a Batman impression, and it's
Yes.
just really it's a pilot moment. A lot of this episode is pilot moments where it's like, that's not going to keep happening, is it? Please.
That, and there's also a scene later on in a couple episodes later where like Spider-Man is chatting with somebody on like AOL Instant Messenger,
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
and they know that he's Spider-Man. I guess that's like he's on his Spider-Man account. Uh,
It's all NBD, of course.
it's so weird. There's so much shit like this. Even in the like these first couple episodes that I think are good, they get picked up and then just dropped for no reason.
Yeah, I'm glad they showed the restraint they did with not having anything like that in the MCU.
It's so weird.
Um, Spider-Man catches Turbojet in the act of stealing some 18th century first edition book that's just like being displayed in a window in New York. And in the ensuing fight and chaos, Turbojet shocks a guard, like a rent-a-cop, to unconsciousness. He's then chased to a warehouse full of mannequins where there's a little conversation had between Turbojet and Spider-Man about their public perception, each of them, before Turbojet escapes by attaching his suit to a mannequin and like distracting Spider-Man with it while he gets out. So he's
Yeah, they have
now,
that. Turbojet's suit looks like something from Tron.
yeah, it looks like bullshit power armor that looked off-brand that nobody wants. It's like a knockoff Buzz Lightyear suit.
Buzz Lightyear.
The Villeroy Towers Defense Fund has reached $1 million thanks to all of Turbojet's donations so far, and everyone is celebrating him during the protest, including MJ. Harry tries to tell his friends, but inadvertently screams it to everybody at the protest that Oscorp is responsible for the upcoming demolition of Villeroy Towers directly. This results in the trio being chased off of campus by angry protesters. And later, we cut from that to Harry drinking martinis by himself in the apartment, which is a thing that he's always doing. He's a super cool 22-year-old alcoholic. Very cool.
Epic.
Uh, Peter goes up to his bedroom and has a little moment where he looks at his family photos. It's the only look at Aunt May and Uncle Ben that we get in this show, and of course they're totally off model and they look nothing like Rosemary Harris and Cliff
Robertson.
Robertson. Just totally, whatever. They're here. I have some trivia about that later, but we'll get to it. Um, Peter then goes and suits up, and the only like suiting up and going out moment we get again, pilot moment to more of that sick. It's so fucking great. Those
It's so
like
good.
whining synths. It's oh my god. I want to watch like the Microsoft like visualizer, the MP3
Yes,
one.
this is such Microsoft Visualizer music. It's
Yeah,
so
it's
it's so
great.
right on the money.
The disgruntled janitor from Villeroy Towers from the beginning of all of this turns out to be Turbojet.
Oh my
Uh,
god.
his girlfriend, someone who wants to spend time with him, I don't know, tries to convince him to come join the protest, but he's like, "No, I'm busy building things," and a
I'm busy, bitch.
totally not Unabomber vibes. Like in here, don't come into my workroom. He looks
I'm
like
trying to build
Ulysses from
things.
Fallout.
It
Also,
does.
he
And
looks a lot like Ulysses.
there's another Fallout thing right at the very end of the show, Craven the Hunter, who's voiced by the guy who voices Marcus in Fallout 2 in New Vegas.
Yeah, good old Dorn. After let's see, where are we? Sorry. Turbojet says that he's busy, he's building his suit, he tells the girlfriend to fuck off, I'm busy. Spider-Man sees, flashes of turbojet blue energy from windows outside. Very lucky. And goes to confront him after he's sold off the money to its fencing partner. Turbojet mentions during this illicit money transfer that he is going to bring a telescope, the Galileo telescope, to fence next, which is a pretty hot item that might take some time to move. He mentions that he's not in this for, Robin Hood goodness, but because people are stupid. and that he can trick them easily, which is just,
Get
you know,
tricked.
that's true. We have one more attempted robbery with the Galileo telescope at the event where everything is going to be, handed off. Harry's there to make a speech, and in the end, after Spider-Man traps Turbojet, behind a wall of web and says, "Up, don't try to break that telescope, idiot! It's a fake." He then uses Turbojet's words against him, going, "Hey, didn't you call all these people fucking moron idiots?" It's a
What
really weirdly paced ending.
it is. One thing there are a couple things I like here. Earlier, when they were having their conversation, like when they were doing like the cash deal, there was like the scene where they were like both in like heavy shadow, and I actually really liked the way it looked. It's one of the few times the animation in this show kind of impressed me.
Mhm.
And the other thing is like when Harry's giving his speech at the science center that they're building, somebody just yells, "You suck, Osborn," and it's really fucking funny.
Yeah, for sure.
And not only
Uh,
that, when Turbojet gets like his words thrown back at him, he's like, and he throws the Galileo telescope and it
yeah,
hits somebody in the face and she goes flying back.
yeah, it's really weird the physics of it, but yeah, I have it there in my synopsis that he just chucks the telescope and it downs a protester. After he's been outed as an asshole, he's like, "No!" He doesn't even try to defend himself. He just leans into it, goes, "Yeah, fuck you."
Fuck you,
Uh,
bitch.
and in the end, he briefly kidnaps MJ because MJ has to get kidnapped by villains.
Of course.
And after a
It's,
chase
it's based on
sequence,
the
and
Raimi movies, after all. MJ's got to be in peril.
of course, after a little slingshot maneuver to incapacitate and take down Turbojet for the count, which again the animation is so jarringly bad when he like punches him and his divisor explodes into little triangles. Um, MJ tells Spider-Man that they've had their little moments and such, but there's someone else, and Spider-Man accepts this and takes off from the crime scene. And at the end of the episode, the news is talking about how the telescope has been auctioned for a relocation fund. And even though Villeroy Towers is being bulldozed in the end to make room for the Science Center, these people will be rehomed with this fund. So Harry did a good thing. Peter cracks wise about action speaking louder than words. And MJ kisses him, and we get a little web slinging and wraps up the pilot episode. Quick, easy, done.
There you go.
Uh, Turbo Jet.
Turbojet.
God, goddamn.
Episode 2.
The second episode is called Royal Scam, and the plot moves a lot
That's a
quicker.
great Steely Dan album, by the way.
The plot moves a lot quicker in this one. Essentially, Peter is hurting for cash. He's attempting to figure out his monthly expenses. At the beginning, there's a great little communism capitalism mix
Yeah,
up
I
joke.
was about to say Harry straight up quotes Marx.
Yeah, I did remember exactly who that was, but I recognize it as like that's communist diatribe, right? And Harry's like, that's communism. After some time, there's a little helicopter incident outside that culminates in the government, quote unquote, asking for some assistance on a case. Spider-Man is, propositioned to do his patriotic duty by the government. Uh, but by and large, through some deception and deviousness, it turns out this is actually the Kingpin, who is trying to trick Spider-Man into stealing the TX1 super chip to, I have it here, decrypt confidential satellite transmissions that drive the world's financial markets. This,
It's the grand return of Fed Spider-Man from Toei Spider-Man. He's
of
working with the
course, yeah,
Feds once again.
not quite Interpol, the fake FBI, CIA, whatever. Of
Totally
course,
real.
this Kingpin is, of course, Michael Clark Duncan,
Rest in peace,
the
King.
the Daredevil Kingpin of Ben Affleck, your fame.
They actually do make a couple of Marvel references in this show. Like they talk about the X-Men and Stark
Yeah,
Industries.
yeah, yeah. It's kind of nutty. How much leeway they had, kind of with in the same vein as Raimi name dropping Doctor Strange and Spider-Man 2. Just having fun with it. Rights be damned.
Having
They make
fun.
the pop culture references are a little all over the place
Oh,
too, for
they
this
get
being
they get they get
MTV in
way worse.
2003.
They get way worse in the second half. It starts to get to the point
Absolutely, they do.
where Spider-Man is making like Gex jokes.
Oh god, yeah. You know what? I got that vibe. I should have written that down. That's really good.
There's one specific one that I'll talk about when we get to it that is straight up a Gex joke.
Disguised as federal agents, Kingpin's henchmen convince Spider-Man that he should steal the chip from the mob and return it to them, the FBI, the good guys. In exchange for doing his country this service, he's promised that his back will be scratched as well, and that the Bureau will let it be known that Spider-Man helped them out, which is an endorsement that Spider-Man greatly needs because his public image is lower than ever at this point. People really the Spider-Man hatred from the public is kind of jarring in this show, I think, given so much of the end of Spider-Man 1 being like, you mess with Spider-Man, you mess with all of us, what the fuck?
The Spider-Man hatred is intense in this show.
I guess after that he is kind of implicated in Norman's death just because Harry keeps saying it. Which begs the question, like, how many people fucking believe Harry, you know?
Also, do they remember that that Norman Osborn was the fucking Green Goblin?
That just doesn't matter. Don't worry about that.
I don't think they ever mention it in the Raimi movies. Like that, nobody ever, like the general public doesn't know that Norman is the Green Goblin.
They just never put it together that the Green Goblin attacks stopped on the exact night that Norman Osborn was murdered by Spider-Man. But whatever.
Who was fighting the Green Goblin?
It's a big secret that when Harry, like stumbles into the Goblin Cave and there's all the Goblin shit, and he's like, "Oh God, my dad was the Goblin." He looks into the camera and says that. You remember?
Yes.
But yeah, Spider-Man's public image is hurting badly in this show, and it does not get better towards the end.
No.
Of course, this patriotism is taking its toll on Peter's social commitments. MJ has a 3-night acting showcase that Peter has promised to attend, and he misses the first night when Spider-Man, of course, learns he was tricked into stealing the chip and must track down Kingpin. On the second night, Peter is temporarily abducted by real FBI agents, including, goddammit, Keith David, who is just fan-fucking-tastic. I love hearing him in Spider-Man stuff.
Love to see Keith David.
Absolutely. John Carpenter's favorite. The third night culminates with a climactic action sequence where Spider-Man outmaneuvers Kingpin and takes him down solo out of a helicopter. It's weird, and it's, they make a lot of fat jokes. They don't really like portray the physicality of Kingpin the way a lot of other takes on the character have. It's really just a bevy of fat jokes. He has a cane that spits out like electricity and also like knockout gas when it's convenient. But yeah, he takes a helicopter to try to get away, and Spider-Man crashes it. He needs to get the chip back so he can return it to the actual FBI. At the end of all of this, Kingpin is subdued in like part of a broken off construction crane, like the triangular portion of it snaps off and falls and acts as like a prison. Even though for a second it's like a fake out where we think he's going to get killed or something.
Yeah.
But after all of this, when everything is said and done, Peter makes it to the third night of MJ's show. And they have a little meet cute moment outside, but Peter is of course let down when he has to watch her walk away, being held by her co-star. Spider-Man can't have what he wants. Boo-hoo. Ending the episode.
A couple things before we move on to the next episode. The fucking number one, Peter has a Sony phone. He has a Sony Ericsson.
I did not catch that.
He has a Sony phone. Number two, I like that it's a kind of a little thing, but I like that they use actual guns instead of like the lasers that they had in Spectacular.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. It's very.
They have this one like double barrel shotgun model that is
use
so
it
funny.
Everywhere. It's like every Elmer Fudd gun.
It straight up looks like an Elmer Fudd. It doesn't look like a real sawed-off shotgun. Like, why would a cop be using a sawed-off shotgun? It's very funny looking. And then also at the very end, when MJ walks away to be with her boyfriend, she like has this huge, gigantic cartoon tear that just made me laugh every time.
Yeah, and the lizard has the same thing in the next episode at the very end. Funny. It's something. So we are on to our third episode, Law of the Jungle.
Time for Rob Zombie.
Yeah, here we are, Robert Zombert himself.
Rob Zombie.
Peter is earning much needed cash by working at the lab for his professor, Dr. Connors, who was he introduced in Raimi 1 or did we not see him till
No,
Raimi 2? That's the first time we saw him.
he vocally mentions him when they're talking
That's
about
it.
like getting a
Yeah.
job, like
Yeah.
he got fired.
That's what it is. That's what it is. So yeah, this would be in that regard the first take on the Raimi Doc Connors, I guess, before we see what's his name that plays him in Spider-Man 2.
Yep.
But this is the aforementioned in the film, Dr. Connors, world-class scientist as always. He's studying reptilian DNA for its regenerative powers. Regenerative powers, Jesus. This is extremely important to Dr. Connors because I don't know if you know this, but he lost his arm. He's a one-armed man with a
Oh my
cool,
god, I
like,
can't believe it.
Deus Ex robot hand that looks cool. But specifically, this Dr. Connors lost his arm in an industrial accident at Oscorp years before. We eventually learned we're researching something called the wafer, which is like a very thin, very small bomb.
The
I don't remember what
wafer.
it stands for, but it's some like lightweight, small detonation device.
I'm gonna be honest, like I straight up like forgot good chunks of this episode. Like I don't remember what happens to the lizard at the end of this episode.
Oh yeah,
Uh
this is like the second shortest synopsis I have this episode. It flies by. Um, Meanwhile, as the 1 year anniversary of Norman Osborn's death approaches, Harry Osborn is reluctantly asking Peter and MJ to help him sort through his father's personal effects now that the will and estate have all been settled. Back at the lab, Dr. Connors, of course, does the Dr. Connors thing and secretively injects himself with reptile DNA that not only
juice.
stimulates his arm stump to grow again, but has the undesired effect of slowly changing him into the angry, vengeful lizard. Rob Zombie does a pretty good voice in this. Some of it's probably modulated with like lizard effects, but it's I'm not the biggest Rob Zombie listener, White Zombie or solo stuff in the world, but I think it's fine. I've seen some of his stuff. I like his music enough. It's interesting to have him in something like this. It's probably the best character he could have played. I'm not interested in like a Rob Zombie Green Goblin per se.
Yeah, I mean, he's got a sort of low gravelly voice, and it works, but it also plays into the idea that this version of as opposed to something like we saw in Spider-Man Blue or Spectacular, where not Norman, where Dr. Connors was given a lot of dignity. Here he's just
Yeah,
like really bitter.
yeah. Honestly, if it wasn't Rob Zombie, Jeffrey Combs should have been the one in this role with the scientist vibe.
Yeah,
But it is what it is.
we had to save
Uh,
him for the other evil scientist episode.
exactly. On the street, Dr. Connors is accosted by an armored truck thief in the middle of doing his thing with his big Elmer Fudd gun. But in the ensuing chaos after the fact, Spider-Man catches the bad guy in a chase sequence. At the end of it all, Dr. Connors sticks up for Spider-Man to the cops and says no, he wasn't helping. He was preventing the robbery. Um, so in our end sequence, he makes his way to Oscorp to go kill him. Uh, Spider-Man, of course, doesn't really want this to happen. So he shows up, and eventually there's like a team up between Harry and Spider-Man, where Harry's wielding an axe, and they're both trying to fight off and fend off the lizard. And all of this culminates at the end with a helicopter chase sequence where Spider-Man is dangling from the helicopter, but is also carrying the lizard on a web below and trying to talk him. Like he's been talking to him this whole time, and it's very clear that there's very little, if any, humanity left in Kurt. But in this final time when he's talking to him, Kurt just slashes out at the web and falls to his death and dies on the pavement. Like it's very like jarring and weird.
So that's
Again,
what happens to him.
another weirdly paced episode. He's like, "Hey, it's gonna be okay. We're gonna take you somewhere and fix you, Kurt." And he just slashes the web and falls and dies.
Ah.
And he's on the ground, and the same cartoon tear falls out of his eye, and he dies. Harry asks MJ and Peter to go get a pizza in the aftermath of the everything. Harry's going to stay behind. He wants the other two to go get the pizza. And in the really awful, like, it's like they're in front of a .png file of like neon lights. It's not a 3D environment. They're just in front of a still image.
It's
It's in,
stylized. I like
it's
the way it looks.
yeah, I guess, yeah. It's in the opening sequence. They use the shot a lot. MJ
Yeah.
just talks a lot about how she's noticed how much Harry's been taken care of by Peter lately, and plants a big kiss on him, ending the episode.
Big old
We
kiss.
are 3 episodes in.
So for me, like I said, the Rob Zombie as Dr. Connors is really fucking funny to me. There is there's when Dr. Connors first runs into that robber that's trying to rob the armored truck, he looks like a fucking NPC from Cyberpunk. It's really funny.
Yeah, he really does.
I think this is the first time we see straight up blood, where when the robber gets like mauled by the lizard, it's like, whoa, okay.
Not the last time either.
Not the last time. Oh my god, I don't know, can we even talk about this scene? Or did we? There's the scene where Peter goes to talk to Dr. Connors and he's like, I was fucked up by Oscorp, and he turns
Yeah, no,
and
I didn't.
he's got a lizard head. Oh my god, it's so funny.
Ooga booga.
Ooh, but he want a lizard head. But I also like that he has this like bipedal lizard form, but then he takes more serum and he turns into like a monster lizard, which I actually like the way that looks.
Yeah, I like
Uh,
it over like the Amazing Spider-Man take on it.
Yeah, and that fight scene that they have at the end with where in the Oscorp building with Harry, that's a really good fight scene too.
Mhm.
But yeah, overall, I like this episode.
Yeah, I can't say I disliked it too much. It's one of the more I'd say this is one of the more relatively grounded episodes. It's a really straightforward the lizard story. Just another version of it, just with a Connors that's not quite, what we're used to, which I guess is the biggest draw of it. But it ends very abruptly, I think. But with that said, we're on to our fourth episode, Sword of Shikata, which
Uh,
revolves what's up?
Sword of Shikata, which might be either this or the next episode. They might be my favorite episodes.
Really?
I've for some reason like this episode in particular was like, let's go, another new villain. Just a lot of weird, crazy shit that I didn't expect, and I had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, this is the one I would have seen clips of when I first like saw it on TV ages ago,
Exactly.
and was like, nope, not interested. But the plot of this episode centrally revolves around a wealthy businessman and avid collector of items, luxury goods, named Richard Damien, who hires a female warrior assassin ninja lady named Shikata, a swordswoman, to capture Spider-Man for his collection of rare animals.
He's just gonna keep Spider-Man in a cage. He's like,
He's just
he's a more monster than man. I'm gonna keep him in a cage.
I'm gonna get 7 costumes made and give him a clean one every day to wear. I don't know, give him a bowl of spider kibble.
I kind of fucking love this guy, this like evil movie tycoon villain where he's just rich and he
Yeah,
wants Spider-Man to keep in a cage. He's like, he has a couple funny lines too. He's like a fun character.
yeah, he's more than just like the '80s businessman from Futurama or something. He's got a bit of he's got a charisma to him, a unique charisma. It's
Yeah.
fun. It's a good villain for this universe. Shikata feels kind of one-dimensional, I guess, but
I fucking love Shikata.
honor, ninja, sword,
Which
very straightforward concepts.
she's obviously sort of before, Craven actually shows up in the very last two episodes of the show. I thought she was going to be this show's version of Craven.
Sure.
But like when she does her stupid shit where she deflects the bullets with her sword and like she has like wizard powers for some reason, like she could shoot
Yep.
green energy at people, like fuck yeah, let's go.
Yeah, it's what all ninjas can do that. It's a thing. Um,
I love to see stupid new villains.
Very shortly after this, Shikata and Spider-Man have their first head-to-head fight, and Shikata at the after being back and forth, they best each other a few times. Shikata decides that Spider-Man is too noble a foe to simply capture, and to honor her own personal code of honor, they must fight to the death. she has to die at his hands or he has to die at her hands. So Shikata returns to Richard Damien to inform him that she needs to renege on their deal, that they no longer have one, and that instead she plans to lure Spider-Man into the fight of his life. Richard is, of course, super pissed about this and comes up with an alternative strategy to send his thugs to kill Shikata. Uh, Unfortunately, it is the goons who find themselves the victims of Shikata instead. Afterwards, Shikata hunts down Spider-Man and informs him that they have to fight until one of them is dead, which she says probably, I don't know, 8 to 10 times in this episode. It's kind of her thing.
Yeah.
Um, they get into an all-out brawl in the streets, a lot of sword swinging. He gets cut up a lot. It's a really prolonged fight sequence here at the end. Things look grim for Spider-Man until MJ arrives on the scene with a little bit of like MacGuffin save the day advice and is like, "It's her sword, Spider-Man! You have to attack her sword!" So of course that's what happens. Spider-Man vanquishes Shikata without compromising his own, like, I'm not gonna like murder this woman in the streets type thing. I'm gonna use wizard magic to
He
loophole kill her.
he he vanquishes her because he breaks her sword, and the sword contains like all of her power because MJ saw earlier that she was like an old woman until she used
Yeah,
magic to make herself turn
she's
younger.
sunbathes with her sword, and it makes her young and not look like
Yeah.
Iron Maiden anymore.
So Spider-Man plunges the sword to the ground, then breaks it, and then she gets vaporized by her own magic. It's fucking
Yeah,
incredible.
into ghost energy.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's essentially the end of the episode. We get a little bit of Spider-Man dialogue at the end, but it's just another clear cut. All right, villain of the week. Clap our hands of it. We're done. Hope you liked Sword of Shikata. Bow wow.
I really like this. I really like this episode in particular because I like it when they do new villains, as I've said before. But just the fact that she does the stupid deflect the bullet shit and then decapitates a guy, like this is the
Yeah,
moment that I realized that this show was going to be a lot darker than I expected it to be, and I was like, ooh. But then obviously
she
this is before the madness set in, and the things that I wanted from a slightly darker Spider-Man show did not happen.
she cuts a finger off a dude at one point. She decapitates
Yeah,
Richard Damien. It is they're dipping the toes in the water of how dark they're allowed to get here, and I don't know. I maybe if I came into this with a slightly more mature mindset, I would have been like, "Fuck yeah, let's go!" When I first saw this episode, but I think it was mostly the animation style even that turned me off. Which I don't know how I
fair
feel about
enough.
it still, but we'll get more into this later, I suppose. But like, I think specifically, I think this is the exact kind of Spider-Man they could pull back in the Spider-Verse movie sequel. Uh,
Sure, that'd be fun.
Someone's got the render sitting around somewhere of the model.
It's probably like 8 polygons compared to how many they've got in the Spider Verse movies. But there is one more thing that I had to say, which was
Of course.
we're only 4 episodes in, but and we haven't really talked about her all that much. But I actually still kind of like this version of Mary Jane more than the one in Spider Man Two.
Yeah, she even though there is still some wishy-washiness to the nature of what Peter and MJ's
Yep,
relationship is in this show, it's not nearly unlike the mindfuck mind games that they play with each other throughout all of Spider-Man 2, where straight people just be straight.
it's not like kiss me. Oh wait, sorry, I have a boyfriend.
Yeah,
None of
I'm
that
gonna
shit.
marry a beautiful astronaut if you don't love me right now, Peter Parker, Peter
It,
Man,
it,
Spider
it,
Boy.
it instead we get polyamorous King Peter Parker,
Fucking double dipper himself.
which is a thing that straight up almost happens in episode I think 11 or 12.
Yeah, until they like forcibly shut it down. They
They
have
were just
we'll,
letting it
we'll get
happen.
there.
There was a television show where we had polyamorous King Peter Parker. It was happening.
The glory days.
We
I've
were
said
we were
recently
so
to
close.
I recently said to somebody, I don't remember who it was. I was like with everybody, I think it was in reference to this whole like panic over the new Superman being bisexual canonically. I said, how is Marvel not printing money by having Peter Parker use the word triad or polyamory in an issue of whatever run they're in now? That is like free liberal points right there. That's free
Just
money.
fucking
Just print it. That prints itself.
yeah, score your identity politics points. Get them in there.
Just have him say the word one time and watch your sales triple, Marvel. Also
Would
hire new writers.
yeah, please. Yeah, all right. On to what we got. Episode 5 now.
Episode 5, Keeping Secrets. In this episode, Spider-Man catches Talon, voiced by Eve,
Alan.
a female thief who is not Black Cat, who is responsible for a series of high-risk robberies in the city,
Has a better
uh,
haircut than Black Cat.
in the act of robbing a high-rise apartment, kind of like Black Cat, but not really. Um, as I mentioned, I want to say I think this is the worst voice performance on the show. I'm not really familiar with
I
Eve as an artist or whatever it is she does,
Yeah,
so I'm
if you
coming
don't
at this
know,
completely.
Eve is a rapper from the early mid 2000s. And knowing that in context, I think it's, a fine performance. I just this episode has a lot of like good character stuff that I enjoy.
Oh,
Specifically
sure, yeah,
the Peter MJ Harry dynamic. I
yeah.
really like. I really like the way that they do it in this specific episode. And there's just fun moments of Spider-Man knows there's a villain, but the villain is in his personal life. But the villain doesn't know that he's Spider-Man, and blah blah blah. This stuff is stuff that I really like in Spider-Man stories. So I really enjoy this episode.
Yeah, for sure. Um, so she's in the act of robbing a high-rise apartment. Um, at this point, they do their little, oh hey, don't rob this place, and they fight. And Talon actually gets the best of Spider-Man and escapes. Which is not the first time, which is not the last time, I should say. That happens quite a bit in this episode. Um, Spider-Man at a point does see her face without her weird cyberpunk goggles that she wears, so he gets a good look at her secret identity, but just doesn't have a name for the face. Meanwhile, Harry, best friend and roommate of Peter Parker, has been uncharacteristically keeping to himself for the past few weeks, which has Peter and MJ concerned. But that concern turns to excitement when Harry reveals that he's been seeing someone that he really likes, which is rare for Harry, who is characterized as like a womanizer and a one night stand kind of rich dude, not really a feelings guy. It's caught MJ and Peter very off guard, and Harry wants to introduce his new girlfriend to Peter and MJ over dinner. Harry's new girlfriend, Cheyenne Tate, arrives, and Peter recognizes her, unfortunately, to be Talon.
There's
MJ,
specifically when he opens the door to their apartment, and he like sees that it's Talon. He makes like the dopiest face of all time. It's so funny. Like
I
it's almost on par with the face that Eddie makes in that one episode of Spectacular. I sent the picture to Alex when we were talking about the show before
yeah,
we started recording. Uh, it's a great face. It reminded me of fucking well, Alex. What did you say? It was like Facade, the game Facade. Have you ever played
it's
that?
a
All
lot
the
like
animation looks like
Facade.
Facade.
The cel-shaded, just like shadow nature of it. It looks a lot like Facade. Like Trip is about to grab Peter by the collar and say, "Peter, you need to leave."
Peter says melons and then gets kicked out immediately.
Oh man. Yeah. Peter fears that Cheyenne is ultimately going to hurt his friend Harry. So as Spider-Man, during the next encounter that they have together during a robbery or what have you, I don't remember what the context is. They just meet up again. Um, he tries to convince her to change her ways and like abandon this and try to be more civilian. This isn't a thing she needs to be doing. But in their ultimate confrontation, Talon, Spider-Man, and the police are all, mixed up together in this. And Talon is freaked out when Spider-Man calls her by her real name during the melee, and she panics and disappears into the night. Later, Cheyenne calls a perplexed Harry to tell him that she's leaving town, maybe for good, and she can't explain why. And the episode just kind of wraps up from here with Peter and Harry, talking about the unfair nature of things like this, and more Peter exposition and monologue before cutting out.
Yeah.
But
This is
it's
the
a really
episode.
good character episode.
Yeah, this is a really good character episode. This is the episode where Spider-Man is in the AOL chat room with this random person that we never see again.
Yeah, it's another thread they just drop.
Exactly. We also get there's a really great line earlier where Spider-Man is trying to argue with Talon, trying to get her to stop robbing people, and she's like, "This." You think you're gonna get me with this Oprah moment? You think that's gonna make me stop like that? For some reason, the phrase Oprah moment was really funny to me.
Yeah, it's
Uh,
real Oprah hours.
there's also like a suit up montage that Cheyenne has, where there's like a blueprint in the background. She's like suiting up to go rob shit as Talon. And the music in that is really great. But yeah, I mean, the way that this episode, a lot of the episodes just kind of end.
Yeah.
But Cheyenne just kind of disappearing is a real disappointing ending. I wanted to know more about her. I wanted to see more.
Yeah, she was an interesting concept. She did have a little bit more character outside of just being a Black Cat stand-in. But I wish I felt better about her voice performance. It's very clearly somebody that like isn't used to voice acting who is suddenly doing voice acting, and a lot of it just reads
Yeah,
as like a lot of it comes off as maybe the first time she saw the lines.
yeah,
Uh,
that's
I
absolutely
I
true.
I don't know. It just marred it a little bit for me. It took me out of it. I was so immersed. I was so engrossed in this. I really felt like I was Spider-Man.
Exactly. It makes you feel like Spider-Man. But now it's time for episode 6, which is what I would consider the last good episode.
Yeah, maybe.
The,
Tight
the
squeeze.
last episode that I enjoyed without being like, it's the last episode I watched without saying, "What the fuck is this show?" At least once.
Sure, I'll grant you that. Yeah, episode 6, tight squeeze, begins with a boardroom meeting that is interrupted by Heradax, a trio of former KGB agents led by a man named Sergey, who blast through an outside window to gain entry to the building.
They look like
Uh,
GI Joe villains. They're trying to look for
yeah,
hype. Trying to look for hyper diamonds to use for X-ray lasers.
Pterodax is a well outfitted organization, and they use like sonic blasters, and they have this body armor that they're encased in. That's just very just Googled sci-fi body armor, and that's what they're wearing. Uh, it's just very dollar store. Very we're Pterodax. Take us seriously, please. Um, Additionally, they've got jetpacks, very hovery jetpacks, not quite turbojets, but it's just a thing people build a lot in this universe. Um, During this, over at Empire State University, it's a relatively harmless afternoon where our main trio of characters are taking turns participating in voyeurism with a pair of Harry's binoculars, just being super weird about it in public too.
A lot of weird
Uh,
sexual shit in this show.
yeah, like an alarming amount, but it's MTV. Gotta score horny points. That's what the kids want.
Exactly.
Uh,
Horny points
w-
and decapitation points.
yeah, I mean it's Spider-Man. That's what he's famous for.
Of course.
When it's his turn, Peter uses the horny binoculars to spot Pterodax invading the meeting, and then makes up some bullshit that allows him to hurry off and go to the rescue as Spider-Man. Pterodax are moments away from detonating the safe in the room in order to steal its contents. Prototype hyper diamonds when Spider-Man shows up.
The prototype hyper diamonds, dude. I need them.
It's Zale's and Jared's brand new project. It's the prototype hyper diamond to show her how much you
Give me
really
my
care.
fucking
This
hyper
business.
diamonds.
Um, Spider-Man makes quick work of the Pterodax thugs, and then as Peter, he's off to the news channel Empire One to sell a Spider-Man news video, as Jameson is not interested in buying his video and is lowballing him for his photos. At the station at Empire One, we and Peter are both introduced to a new character and eventual new love interest, Indira, or just Indy Daimonji, a beautiful television intern with a quirky personality. I didn't write
Quirky.
that.
Quirky
Who
mode.
who aids him in getting his footage aired. Unfortunately, it also lands both of them eventually as one of the many hostages that Pterodax takes when they commandeer the newsroom. Pterodax makes a very simple demand. They want Spider-Man, or they're going to start executing hostages. As soon as the
Uh,
moment... What's up?
do you want to just talk about Indy real quick?
Yeah, I take a brief second to talk about her. Indy, I don't like a lot as a character. I feel mean saying that because like she's very clearly like, okay, Spider-Man has had so many different girlfriends. Let's try to make someone new that stands out. Let's try to make someone like hip. And that's, I think,
Yeah.
where the thread gets lost, is that they veered hard into like it's one thing that, like, the idea of, okay, give Spider-Man a weird alt girl girlfriend, but she's like, I have no way to describe it. She's obnoxious in the way that she tries to be like hip.
I don't
I
necessarily
I
I don't
Go
necessarily think
ahead.
they were trying to go for hip. Uh, I like the I immediately I was like, oh, it's a new girl. I've never seen this before. I like when they create new love interests for Spider-Man.
Yeah, by all
Uh,
means.
and um, I also sometimes I also thought that she was kind of annoying, but I gotta say, eventually she ended up kind of growing on me. I liked Indy as a character, and what they end up doing to her at the end of the show is kind of fucked up.
Yeah, it's
And
pretty weird.
I wish somebody out there at Marvel put her in something, get her in there.
Yeah,
I
no,
think I think every character has the opportunity to be good if you give them the right opportunity.
I literally
But
was
put Indy Diamondji in more stuff.
when I was talking with my partner Nicola about the ending of this and how it ends and how I was like, no, this is exactly the kind of weird, perfect bullshit they could like pull out for the Spider-Verse sequel. I had mentioned like, they could even like do some like thing they did where when all the other Spider people went back to their universes in the first Spider-Verse, like, touch upon what happened with Indy, give that an ending. Don't, for the love of God, don't give us another season of this. Just give it an ending in like Spider-Verse or something. Like cap it off. Um,
Yeah.
but with all that said, Pterodax has the hostages. They need Spider-Man to show up, or they're gonna start, popping some caps, as it were. As soon as the moment presents itself, Peter does eventually escape to the shadows to reemerge as Spider-Man. Once the fighting ensues, Peter realizes he's in a trap, and after everyone's evacuated, he's located the I think it's five bombs that are scattered throughout the station. The last
Yeah.
one being detected with a
Which
spider sense.
yeah, fucking earlier Spider-Man steals one of the communicators, and one of the Pterodax guys is like, "My communicator!"
Yeah, all
It's
the accents are
so
great.
it's so hammy. And oh shit, yeah, there's another note I had. Earlier, Peter makes like a burned CD mixtape for Indy. And Harry
Yeah,
just keeps talking about a custom CD. A
that's what they
custom
call those,
CD.
huh? A
Uh
custom CD.
but yeah, this whole bomb defusal thing feels like a level in a Spider-Man video game. It looks like a Spider-Man video game too.
Yeah,
It's
even he just like he sees two of them on opposing pillars and webs them together. It's just missing like a big QTE cue.
yeah,
The diamonds are retrieved, and Spider-Man takes down the remaining bad guy that's been left behind, Alexei. Just, get fucked if your name's Alexei or Sergey and you want to fight
get fucked.
Spider-Man.
There's one
Uh,
thing I haven't mentioned it before, but I actually kind of love the way that New York looks in this show. Like it reminds me a lot of like Batman Beyond. It's like almost like
yeah,
a
the
cyberpunk
colors.
kind of dark lit neon kind of cityscape, and I really like the way that it looks. Obviously, it doesn't look anything like the New York that's in the Raimi movies,
Hmm.
but I think there's a charm to it.
For sure. No, there's a lot of interesting color choices that are made. Spider-Man defeats eventually all of Pterodax, and there's a high-flying fight with Sergei at the end that it culminates in. Once everything is said and done, Peter rejoins everyone after the commotion, and Indy makes during everything, Indy had made an allusion to the fact that she was attracted to Peter, and now that everything is said and done and the embarrassment is faded, Indy feels the confidence to fully confess her feelings and kisses Peter,
That
just
was
as
fast.
just as MJ is racing towards them, intending to make her feelings clear to Peter in classic Spider-Man timing.
Yeah, if anything, the overarching story beat that they try to come up with is that the love triangle between Peter and Indy and MJ. But the problem is that there's not really any connective tissue between the episodes. I guess maybe I would say maybe that comes from them airing it in the wrong order, but they didn't make them in the wrong order. So the episodes don't really feel connected together as much as I would like them to.
Yeah.
So, sometimes MJ will completely flip flop on how she feels about Peter, and it's really weird.
Yeah,
And
you reach a point where it doesn't matter how she felt about him at the end of a given episode because she'll feel completely the opposite way at the beginning of the next one.
it's not like Spectacular where there's overarching storylines about who's dating who, and obviously one of the clear things you need to establish in a storyline like that is who is dating who.
Yeah.
And they don't actually establish it. Like, they got at the end of the first episode, Peter and MJ like kiss, and it's like, okay, they're together now. But in the next episode, they're not, and it's like,
Yeah, when the whole culminating like factor at the end of the first movie was no, we can't be together. No, we can't. And then the first episode ends that way, and then they're kissing again in the third one. It's so fucking all over the place.
it's weird.
Very inconsistent in how
But
consistent
anyway,
it is. We're
now we're going into the back half essentially, episode 7, which is where I would say the madness sets in.
Yeah, this is probably I would say this is probably the goofiest episode premise wise.
Yeah,
The most out there.
this episode is the one where I was like, what the fuck is this show? And then the episode right after that, I was like, what the fuck is this show?
Hot take, that 8th episode, the party, that's probably my favorite episode.
That's fair enough, but it's just such a left turn tone wise
Oh,
that
for sure.
I never really didn't expect it coming. But this, I would say this is like the craziest episode of the entire show, other than like the
Yeah.
finale.
Our 7th episode, Head Over Heels, finds Peter Parker juggling his academics, his floundering social life, and his heroic rescuing career, all one after the next. What Peter can't save is his unfortunate pairing with Christina, a new lab partner character that is introduced to us in this episode.
I gotta say, she kind of bad though.
Yeah, not enough goth girls in Spider-Man. Take
She kind
note,
of bad
Marvel.
though.
Whatever executive listens to this podcast, more goth girls in Spider-Man, please.
Get him in there. Get him in there.
She
Put
is
him in
his
the
new
movies.
psychology lab partner. She is gifted and quirky, a scientific type who is also fanatical in her devotion to Spider-Man. She
She
has
has like
a
a Spider-Man
love
scrapbook.
journal.
Yeah.
And she if anybody had a scrap of Spider-Man's hair, it would probably be this bitch. She's nuts for Spider-Man. A goth girl who loves Spider-Man is precisely my type. Uh, she convinces Peter that she has the perfect invention to help them score a high grade in class, an ESP crown.
The thing from Ghostbusters that
Yeah,
Louis Tully wears
exactly.
on his head.
That she wants to demonstrate by reading Peter's mind in her room. Uh, I would also do what Peter did and let the goth girl put her stupid astrology weirdo hat on me just to do that. But like, good lord, it's made of like a toaster with like circuit boards in the toaster. Some
I
James
was
Rolfe shit.
he really should have just been like, yes, I believe in astrology. Can I please fuck now?
He just starts rattling off his like rising and all his houses that he's memorized for the specific moment just to pull astrology bitches. While she's wearing the ESP crown, attempting to read Peter's mind, the crown malfunctions, believe it or not, jolting her brain with electricity to the point where after it, attacks her brain, the voltage has altered Christina's reality perception, and she now has like a living Spider-Man hallucination that lives in her love journal and advises
Yeah.
her on how to get close to the real Spider-Man that it
This
calls
show is
out to her.
this show is fucking nuts. Like, this is the jump the shark moment where it's goth lady gets zapped in the head by the thing
Mhm.
from Ghostbusters, and then suddenly has a psychotic break where she believes that Spider-Man is talking to her, and she's trying to like get them to fall in love. And she
Yeah,
also
and
has an acid gun that
all of us.
shoots
Yeah, oh yeah, we're getting
acid.
there. We're getting there.
Well, they
Uh,
referenced it earlier, but like, this show is nuts.
she has this love journal with a talking like that scene in like the original made for TV where Pennywise is like talking in the photo journal or whatever. She has one of those, but that's Spider-Man.
It's like the book from Mist.
And the best way the book advises her to get Spider-Man's attention is going to be to jump off a bridge and try to kill herself. Uh, like you do.
What is this show?
Spider-Man, of course, is like, no, don't do that, and rescues her. And when she tries to be like, oh, Spider-Man, you saved me, he's like, fuck you. Don't do that again. I hate you. And webs away.
Fuck you, bitch.
So Christina is now no longer able to distinguish fantasy from reality and sets her sights on MJ as her next target for Spider-Man's affection, who she views as major competition. After all the times that Spider-Man has saved her ass. She uses her acid gun and kidnaps MJ and takes her to a wedding venue to await Spider-Man to show up and profess his feelings.
Oh wait, you forgot the other subplot of this episode, which is that MJ really wants to talk to Peter about their individual little tidbits. So she comes up with little notes for them to pass around, and Peter's trying to come up with like a personal fact about himself that isn't like I'm Spider-Man. So they end up going to the library to share their notes. Peter's note is that he's like allergic to some kind of fish or something. But MJ's note is that she like used to hide in the closet when her parents were like fighting.
It's like fucking cringe.
It's so like heavy and dark. And Peter's like reading it out loud in the library. It's like, what the fuck is happening?
Yeah, wow, it sounds like your childhood really sucked. Anyway, my aunt loved me a lot.
My aunt who's not in this show.
Yeah, fuck her. In our climax here, Spider-Man is forced to put on the ESP crown himself, which Christina says she can use to divine his secret identity, which she says is average and unexciting. And while this is happening, while she thinks she's figuring this out, Peter flees with MJ and breaks into an elevator to get away. Christina is also in an elevator. There's a little elevator sequence as they're getting away. Spider-Man eventually stops Christina's elevator with webbing and saves her from just crashing to the ground and dying. Or rather, sorry, he saves MJ, right? And Christina is just left in the elevator. And at first, with everything that has fucking happened in this show so far, I just fully expected her to slam into the ground and die, which is kind of
I straight up thought she was going to die.
I had written while I'm taking my notes that she's dead, and then they do give us like her being wheeled away on a gurney with like a neck brace on, and more mental trauma notes and stuff. But like I had to go back and redact that. Like, oh no, wow, no, she actually lived. Never mind. Someone.
This show is so fucked up.
She just fell down an elevator shaft. Don't worry about it. MJ and Spider-Man have a little discussion about his secret identity and how it should remain a secret. Before they part, and also on the outside of that, Peter and MJ make up from their little note-giving, fiasco. He relates that he said stupid shit, and she realizes, oh, maybe I was asking too much by asking you to do this very simple thing, Peter. And that just wraps up the episode.
What is this show?
It is so dramatic, and I want to like it. I really do. I want to like this show, but at the end of the day, it's just like headache inducing, but I can't look away.
As soon as I watched this episode yesterday, as of when we're recording this, so Tuesday. I watched this on Tuesday, and as soon as I got to episode, because I started at episode 6, it was when I started on Tuesday, and then I was like, oh, that was good, and then I watched episode 7, and it's like, oh no, what is gonna happen next? And then we get into like the most dour episode other than the finale.
Yes, this one's kind of morbid. Episode 8, The Party, which again, I want to say this is probably my favorite episode of the show. I've seen it at least twice.
What is wrong with you?
A lot. But with that said, I think this is an interesting episode, and as depressing as it is, and as pointless as it ends up being with its second part later, I don't know. I feel like this encapsulates a lot of spirit of the show, like in one episode, as morbid as it is, because it is a morbid show.
I mean, yeah, fair enough.
It also relates a lot to I don't know, like the Peter and Max moments. It shows a lot of like characterization of how good this Peter is for the brief time we have him. How he's able to relate and try to talk him down and stuff. But anyway, to start off the plot, we're introduced to Max Dillon, who even in college is still a total dork. People like respect Peter and at least like talk to him and don't shove him in lockers anymore. But Max Dillon in this continuity is also a dork of Peter's caliber that was also picked on in their joint time in high school. And he's still having a bad time adjusting and trying to fit into college life. But what he thinks will solve that problem is joining the Sigma Alpha Chi fraternity to become one of the in crowd.
You know what?
Unfortunately,
This Max Dillon, still better than Amazing too.
yeah, even the certified Sigma male, Max Dillon is better than that Electro.
Yes, sir.
We begin the episode with Max Dillon having been taken hostage by the Sigma Alpha Chi assholes that are in charge of the rush process. They're playing a joke on Max. He's been blinded with duct tape. His ears are covered as well, and he's got on a helmet. They've got him in the back of a limo, and they're just driving around all of New York. I think they intend to leave him somewhere. Uh, but they've stopped for a hot dog, as you do when in New York.
Hot dog
And
ragu.
a blinded and panicked Max makes his way to the front of the vehicle where he inadvertently starts driving, Hail Mary down the streets,
Starts
completely
driving the
blind,
fucking car.
to the point where he knocks himself out and falls on the ground. So this car is just now speeding out of control with him unconscious on the inside of it. Spider-Man arrives on the scene and recognizes the unconscious Max in the car, breaks through the window and webs the steering wheel to steer them to safety. Safety being a giant pool of liquid concrete at a construction site that immediately the car begins to sink in, which is when Max comes to and, of course, begins panicking because he's woken up from the situation he was in to the situation he's currently in. Uh, Spider-Man manages to rescue Max and get him out, takes him to the, unfinished construction site nearby, and it's just like, hey, who did this? And Max doesn't really comply or answer. He just freaks out and pummels the metal that they're sitting on, which is, of course, end of the cold open. We go from this to Peter arriving very late to class, to Professor Cree Summers' science symposium, uh, where he where he gets chewed out by the professor. Outside of this, in the hall, MJ joins Peter and Harry, and they all discuss the possibility of attending the big party at the Sigma house that night. But the other two reflect on Peter's lack of availability to hang out and kind of chide him for his "oh, I'll be there" nature. Um, After this, Max has a chat with Peter about what happened previously when Peter sees his, roughed up face and some very convenient news footage of what happened with Max on TV. Max claims he has no idea who his assailants were, and also very conveniently, his assailants show up, and he's like, "Now there's some cool guys. There's some real Chads over there."
Oh my
Du-
god.
Doug Reisman, the main antagonist of this episode, arrives. The main Sigma male. Uh,
I cannot get over the disparity between violent hazing ritual and funny goofy jokes.
yeah, no, it is tonally just completely all over the fucking place. That's
The
perfect word
tone
for
of
it.
this show is thrown out a fucking window once we jump the shark in episode 7. Like
Yeah, because it.
all semblance of this being a normal television program about Spider-Man goes completely out the window.
Mhm. Yeah, normal is like the last word I would use with it. Max is duped by Doug and the other Sigmas into thinking that he's received a special invitation to their party that they're holding that evening. Peter attempts to stick up for Max and, get physical with the guys, which ends up with him like ninja jumping over the Sigmas and causing them to punch each other. But to save face and not arouse too much suspicion, he lets himself get his ass kicked to not give away his spider identity. Um, when he kind of comes to from the beating, Peter tries to take Max away with him, but is told to stay out of it. We cut to the party that night where Max arrives. He smiles at a girl. He's having a good time. When a robed cultist like Sigma, tells him to come downstairs for the special initiation sequence, which turns out to be another violent hazing ritual where he's rejected and then fired upon by a paintball firing squad. Uh, a horrified and dejected and upset beyond words Max rushes out of the party, flees down the street, and just, almost gets creamed by a few cars crossing it. And he looks up and thinks that he sees a sign from the heavens calling out to him. He sees his name and lights. He sees Max.
And he
And
climbs up on the roof for some reason.
yeah. He climbs up on a roof instead of just taking a few steps to the left or right to get a better look, and realizes this is not a sign, but it's just a sign. It's a maximum shock caffeinated beverage logo, neon light billboard. In a fit of dejection and desperation, Max chucks some shit at the sign, which causes some science gas to come out of it and blow at him. And at the exact same time, lightning strikes the little electrical box on the back of the thing and makes Max into Electro, because that's how science works.
It's the most explosive sign in human history.
If I'm not mistaken, also, no one calls him Electro until like halfway through his second episode.
Yeah, that doesn't happen. He's just Max Dillon, who is now an electricity man.
MJ just kind of refers to him as Electro halfway into like the 2-part one, and I'm just like, okay, well, that's a thing now.
And you know what? I can't believe I'm saying this. The origin in Amazing 2 makes more sense than whatever the fuck this was.
Oh yeah, it makes more sense, definitely. It's I prefer this take on the character, but yeah, the origin is a little just okay.
Absolutely,
sure.
Yes.
Electro, of course, has a score to settle with his previous tormentors, and now that he's this relentless, powerful rage being, he ventures back to the party and makes his entrance and begins torturing Doug before everybody.
Not only does he torture him, he fucking kills him. He fucking fries him to death.
He fries him in front of everybody, and the girl that he smiled at earlier, Sally, attempts to kind of break this up, but he inadvertently shocks her, like, out of his control, which only makes him more mad. So he throws Doug out a window, which doesn't kill him, just, throws him through a window and smashes him on the concrete. It's at that point that he just fries him to fucking death and leaves him on the sidewalk, which is the moment Spider-Man arrives, is after this guy has been murdered. Spider-Man arrives and fights with Electro, just beats him around for a while, lots of quips, until he's about to hit him again when Electro is like whimpering in the corner, which gives Spider-Man the moment of clarity he needs to figure out that this is Max that he's dealing with. Meanwhile, Max, in his desperation and rage, is seeing everybody literally as Doug and is now trying to kill innocent students. Throughout the course of the fight, Spider-Man gets shocked a lot, and eventually tackles Electro from the rooftop that they're on down to the ground below, on top of a little panel for an underground transformer. Spider-Man punches through it and grabs the ground cable below and plugs both sides into Electro, who fades away and vanishes screaming into the power lines of New York, as onlookers cheer and clap now that this poor tortured man is now actually dead.
You fucking killed him. And then this is also the scene where Harry goes, "Murderer."
Yeah, and not only is it that scene, Spider-Man also makes the face he makes at the end of the opening credits sequence shortly after this, where he looks like that fucking cringe ass face he makes. It's so great. I love it and I hate it.
And then Harry and MJ and Peter are the only ones that go to Doug's funeral.
Yeah, like it makes sense if they were the only ones that went to Max's funeral.
That's what I thought it was at first, but then I
know, me
that
too.
Doug was the guy who died.
But Doug, who is apparently like the big dick on campus, no, he gets 3 people at his funeral, and it's a guy that he beat up the day he died.
Well, he was a big dick on campus.
Yeah, truly. The trio, our main characters, reflect on the events that preceded on this, sequence of events this episode. And
And then
Peter
MJ is
reflects.
like, haha, you owe me $25, Harry.
The tone is so fucking all over the place. Uh, and Peter reflects on what heroism means before they all walk away, and the episode is over.
What is this show?
It's a bunch of bullshit, is what it is.
Episode
Which
9.
we're so close to the end, man. We're over the hump. Episode 9, Flash Memory, revolves around the Biker Twins, which is the most creative,
The Biker Twins.
the most creative Spider-Man villain I think I've ever heard of. They're robbing an armored car. There's a red one and a yellow one, and they have a red motorcycle and a yellow motorcycle, and that's all you need to know about the Biker Twins. They rob an armored car and then throttle up the motorcycles for a clean getaway until Spider-Man intervenes, of course. Spidey is surprised at how smart these guys are in planning the robbery. They use a lot of technical jargon. They do a lot of on-the-fly calculations. It's just really impressive for the kind of thugs they seem to be. At ESU, on campus, we get Mr. Flash Thompson, good old Eugene himself, flaunting the fact to MJ that he doesn't have to study anymore because he's landed himself a tutor. Not quite the same Flash we got from Raimi, but to be fair, not one single character in the show is the same one that they're supposed to be, so it's fine, right? With all that said, Flash is in for a big surprise when he learns that his tutor is actually Jeffrey Combs, Dr. Zellner, who is here to shoot some goo, as Jeffrey Combs is wont to do. Actively testing his new brain booster supplement injection on his first subjects, the twins, who had a substantially impaired IQ. He's going to now test this serum on Flash, whose fame evolves from athleticism to intellectualism, as the new serum allows him to charm members of the female student body with his wit and knowledge and recitation of Shakespeare, even in foreign languages. It's very, very cartoon plot. He had a smart juice injection, Always Sunny style. The twins are also, throughout the course of this, continuing to have Dr. Zellner pump them full of the brain booster in an effort to pull off more elaborate crimes that Spider-Man continually attempts to stop. Throughout the course of that plot, Peter is also worried about Flash and the changes that he's going through with that accompany this smart juice, and recognizing that, the same thing is happening with Flash that's happening with the criminals he's fighting. Eventually, Dr. Zellner wants to test his serum on a candidate that he already deems intelligent, and recruits Flash to kidnap Peter to be a new test subject of the juice. At a point, sorry, I lost my fucking cursor there.
While you try to find where you were, there's a fucking scene where Flash has obviously gotten his smart juice, and he's like throwing MJ up and down, and like reciting Shakespeare at the same time, and she's like falling for him.
Yeah,
this show is gonna
even though these characters already have like an established history and broke up.
This show is gonna put me in a fucking straitjacket.
It's like, pretty dumb.
This episode is so weird and fucked up and bad that I forgot that Flash and MJ were already in a relationship in Raimi 1. I completely forgot that until you said that.
Yeah.
This show is nuts.
Yeah. So they attempt to kidnap Peter, Spider-Man, to inject him with juice, but he escapes before that can happen. And Indy drives him to where Zellner has fled with Flash on the subway. In the subway car, Zellner stabs Peter with a syringe, but if I'm not mistaken, I don't remember that doing like anything. Like I remember going, okay, what's gonna happen? And then like nothing happened. He didn't get like woozy or like lose his powers or anything. He just kind of got stabbed with a syringe. He's like, oh no. At a point, Spider-Man uses his web to attach a camera to Flash, which allowed him to record like a conversation between Flash and the Doctor, in which they were able to like reverse engineer a cure for the side effects of the smart juice that made Flash weak. It's all
Yeah.
very, very rushed.
Basically, Dr. Zeldin tells Flash that his brain is so strong that it's killing him. And he tries to contact Peter, and Peter's like trying to sell photos to Jameson, and Jameson gives like a funny line where he's like, "What are you doing? I'm not done throwing you out."
Yeah,
That's
that's
a good
good.
line. But yeah, Spider-Man gets fucking injected with like horse tranquilizer or whatever, and he can't fucking get it up with his webs. He like shoots like limp dick webs. It's really funny.
Yeah.
But right at the end, he ends up using that recording to save Flash's life. He does some science stuff, which I think is fun. And makes a sauce that will cure Flash, but he gets to be stupid again.
Yep, and that's where we end off on this one is we've just met our big stupid Flash for this series, and that's it.
And
You
he's
don't see him ever
gone.
again because there's
Tell him
just
what he's
4 episodes
won.
left, and Flash is in none of them. Sorry, Flash. We'll see you in the Amazing Spider-Man.
What is this show?
We move on. Unless you had anything else you wanted to say about that one.
No, I got all my notes. I'm good.
We move on to episode 10 of 13, Spider-Man Disabled. Peter Parker is photographering and covering a.
Photographing, I think you mean.
No, I'm pretty sure I mean photographering.
Sure.
A a press conference where the mayor of New York City and Tremaine, a visiting Euro dignitary, are addressing the public. As they leave the event, their limousine is shot at with a dart bomb by Silver Sable, because her iconic dart bombs, I guess.
Well, it's more iconic than her staple gun from Spectacular.
Yeah, her fucking Quake nail gun.
It is
As
really funny to me that this show and Spectacular both have Sable in it, which is not really all that common in Spider-Man media.
Yeah,
Uh,
for real.
but yeah, and the other thing is that I realized that obviously we'll find out later that Peter ended up catching Silver Sable in his camera when he's recording the press conference, and it made me realize that this episode is basically just a pastiche on Blowout, the Brian De Palma movie. If you've ever seen that,
I
uh,
think I have.
it's
I
basically
know
the
I'm thinking of
exact same
Blow Up. I've
plot.
not seen Blowout. No.
Blow Up is what Blowout is based on. But it's the
Oh,
same
okay.
general plot of there's some kind of murder thing, political murder that happens, and somebody ends up recording it. Like, what is this show?
The Spider-Man Zapruder film.
Exactly, the Spider-Man Zapruder film.
Spider-Man, of course, comes to the rescue. Peter commandeers the limo and drives it off a bridge so it can safely explode. They just trust him too. He's like, "Hey, give me this limo. Trust me." Indy shows up, the ever helpful intern of news channel Empire One, and she helps him sell footage of the press conference and ensuing car commotion to the network. At which point, Peter officially asks her out, which she enthusiastically agrees to. At the meanwhile, Silver Sable is watching the news with her goon, and then orders him into a melee weapon duel with her for respect, is what I have written down here.
I don't
They just
know. I don't ask
they
questions.
have
I've stopped asking questions at this point.
Yeah, I'm just making sure I'm completely sane and that happened. He's got nunchucks and he just does them for a while and some, lovely mocap. Uh, Sable needs the footage of the conference, because of course that footage proves she's the would-be assassin, and sends her goon after Peter, the notable photographer, videographer of the Daily Bugle. Peter and Harry's apartment is ransacked that night, by goons with more Elmer Fudd shotguns, because of course it's super jarring and hilarious every time I see it, but there it is. They fire a lot of guns in this apartment for the fact that they didn't actually see anybody there.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. Blow out. Yeah, shoot the light out with a fucking sawed-off shotgun.
Eventually it's divined that the conclusion is made the robbers were after the videotape, or the video footage rather, shot during the mayor's speech. Uh, as they're leaving, Spider-Man, exits the building as well and lands on their van. However, they have Spider-Man proofed the van with an electrified roof that knocks Peter off of the traffic, where he's hit by a few cars and immediately bloodies him up and cuts him up a bit.
Gotta make sure you
Um,
Spider-Man proof your shit.
Peter catches the trio, the group, up about the robbery and developments over dinner the following day, with a little bit of bonding with MJ and Indy, who are growing more comfortable with each other, much to Peter's anxiety and delight simultaneously. Um, a digital enhancement of the footage reveals a
Hanson.
woman shooting a dart bomb. Yeah, it's been enhanced. And oh no, there's a Silver Sable type woman there.
Silver
Indy,
Sable,
of course,
fucking Silver Sable type beat.
makes the connection that the woman on the tape is Silver Sable, an Eastern European assassin for hire, whose unique thing is that she only kills criminals. So Peter can't figure out why she's going after the mayor. Why would the mayor of New York ever be a weirdo or a bad guy? Rudy Giuliani's an upstanding citizen. Spider-Man moves out to thwart Silver Sable's plans, still unsure of what they are. Meanwhile, Silver Sable has kidnapped Indy, MJ, and Harry and has them in her possession. Uh, he figures out that Silver Sable has been posing as the mayor's assistant this entire time, and also figures out that the European dignitary is the actual target, not the mayor. Spider-Man rescues his friends from the
What
boom.
a twist? Question mark.
Yeah, okay. And this leads to a dramatic showdown on top of a moving limo carrying Tremaine and the mayor inside. It's during this fight that Silver Sable reveals a secret about Tremaine's identity. He's actually the Piranha, a terrorist with intentions of killing the president.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Earlier when Silver Sable and Spider-Man fight outside that gun store where Silver Sable gets like special bullets or whatever,
Yeah.
that's when Peter makes his best Gex joke, which is like he's trying to get hit where he says that Silver Sable is trying to get her Winona Ryder discount,
Oh my
which
god, yeah, so
you
topical,
have
so
you
timely.
have to understand a very specific topical reference in like the early 2000s, which is that Winona Ryder was caught shoplifting. And so her career sort of was put on ice for a while. She's obviously come back now in like Stranger Things and stuff, and she's popular again. But for a while, she was, stained with the idea that she was a shoplifter. And so,
This Gex joke.
that's what makes it a fucking Gex joke. Is Spider-Man now has gotten to the point of this show where he's like, this is crazier than having an Oscar party at Jerry Garcia's house. It's
You sound
like,
like you're not ready for some tail time.
oh my god, Peter is ready for some tail time because he fucking gets tail in this show.
It's tail time.
This exact episode, he fucks. Peter fucks in this episode.
He sure does, absolutely.
That and
We're very
also
near to that.
my other note is that we refer to Silver Sable's like, I have all of my information on my Palm Pilot.
On my, I don't quite have enough money for a BlackBerry yet.
On my PDA.
So it turns out that Sable is essentially working for the government, be it the CIA, the FBI, whatever. She's an asset who is protecting the president by taking out Piranha, and she orders Spider-Man to stand down. Even though she apparently was telling the truth, Spider-Man crashes the car off a bridge and secures it with web, with Silver Sable landing in the river below, apparently dead.
Yeah, straight up
Whatever.
apparently
Who
dead.
cares?
I don't care anymore.
MJ comes over with the intention of once again having a talk with Peter on the way to class outside of Indy's
For the
influence.
80th time.
But as she enters, Indy is descending the stairs and zipping her skirt back up, with Peter having mentioned it was a bad time.
Peter got his fucking dick wet. Let's go. Dudes rock.
MJ leaves with things feeling awkward, which wraps up the 10th episode of the show. Taking us to episode 11, When Sparks Fly, which is Electro 2, Electro Boogaloo. Thank you.
The only time a villain has gotten a second episode, other than maybe episode 12, but that doesn't really count.
Yeah, absolutely. Begins with two teenage boys goofing off and playing handball like good Americans in an abandoned power plant, who stumble into a weakened Electro who has been hiding and living in the plant, plotting his comeback. And only Spider-Man's timely arrival saves the two teens from becoming a fine red mist when Electro kickstarts a giant industrial fan. Spider-Man disables the fan, but doesn't believe the kid's story about a ghost in the factory or whatever. Over at Empire State University, in Professor Williams' chemistry class, Sally, the girl that Max smiled at and liked at the party, the night of the Electro incident, is unnerved when her computer sends her a message completely on its own, asking her to ask the teacher who got the highest score on the last test, which coincidentally was Max Dillon. I also have noted here that MJ said the last test was a real bitch, which I think is maybe the most vulgar the show has gotten. There's a lot of ass, there's a lot of crap.
I also wrote that. I just said MJ. You can't say that. That's.
I wrote MJ says bitch, lol.
I just wrote, whoa, MJ, you can't say that on TV.
Yeah, this is a Spider-Man joint, lady. Everyone in the class kind of discusses amongst themselves theories as to what became of Max after the incident, because apparently he's been implicated in Doug's death, having disappeared the night of the murder. Even though everyone saw like him get shocked to death, nobody goes, maybe he's Electro. They're just like, oh wow, that's weird that he vanished that day. Later,
I mean, he got turned into an electricity man. Is that really the first conclusion you would jump to?
Maybe. Hey, also, I think Peter Parker might be Spider-Man.
Might be onto
Later,
something.
while she's studying in her room, an eerie vision of Electro appears on Sally's TV screen.
Which is actually pretty creepy. I actually like that scene.
Yeah, no, it's very spooky. It seems that Electro has come back to claim Sally because he loves her and wants them to be together. Electro plans to zap Sally into an electrical being like himself so that they can become a forever couple. He leaves her room as a little bolt of electricity, and then on the streets, he electrocutes Professor Williams, who happens to be walking down the street with her briefcase, her monogrammed briefcase.
Yeah, she tries to basically do her as a test run of turning her into an Electro.
Yeah, he essentially renders her comatose by trying to recreate the experiment, but is interrupted by Spider-Man. Prevents the transformation from fully going through, and Electro runs away while Spider-Man remains on the scene until EMTs can arrive. Back as Peter Parker, and with the other two of the trio standing behind the scenes of the crime scene, it's being packed up as Sally approaches and claims that Max is stalking her and claims that she's going to be the next victim. She hands MJ her audio lab notes on a CD, a custom CD.
Everybody in this show records everything. Everybody's got personal recorders.
Yeah, we're all the rage. That night, Indy visits, and her and Peter begin discussing electrostatic transference, much to Harry's chagrin. He remarks, "Oh, kids these days, science."
Fucking Harry is talking about like that you should be watching R-rated DVDs.
What the fuck is this dialogue? Oh my God.
What is this dialogue? What is this show?
You want to go catch an R-rated DVD later?
Maybe. Sure. Let's go watch some R-rated DVDs and shit. That'd be fun.
MJ listens to the audio lab notes, hears a spooky voice on it, followed by Sally's screams and questions about Max. Spider-Man goes back to the scene of the original episode opening crime with the two boys, asking around for Max and then mentioning Sally to lure out Max, who's now all riled up. From here, we cut back to Sally's, where Max arrives through the TV and it tells her it's almost time. Campus security later finds a smoking outline in the shape of Sally's body in her bed.
That's funny.
Peter catches back up with the gang, with MJ handing him the disc and showing him the audio, which he recognizes as a backwards voice. And of course, Harry has like a thing where he's like, "Oh yeah, my dad used to make me listen to Beatles albums," which is, I wrote down the phrasing of that, make him listen to Beatles albums. I fucking love the idea of Willem Dafoe, of storming on being like, Harry, the White Album.
The entire purpose of Harry in this back half is just to say weird ass shit for no reason.
Pop culture reference.
Whoa! Like
the Beatles.
I think the people who wrote this show also decided to give up. They're like, fuck it.
Mm-hmm. That's a thing Harry can say, because Harry knows what backmasking is. Reversing the audio.
I'm so tired, man. I'm so tired.
We are so close to being done, dude. It is not even funny. We just have some of the most fucked up, morbid Spider-Man to go. Uh, reversing it, they can all hear Max's self-loathing electro monologue / impassioned plea for Sally's love. Professor Williams was his trial run, and Sally is going to be his proof of concept for converting people to electric monsters like him. Peter asks Harry to secure an Oscorp high-voltage storage container to pass on to Spider-Man to save the day. Electro begins the process of turning Sally via the neon sign and some lightning strikes, when Harry and MJ arrive to distract him. In the meantime, Spider-Man also arrives shortly thereafter, but his containment unit is partially melted into the floor by Electro, and the cable won't reach Electro from where it currently is. Spider-Man decides to use himself to complete the circuit, dangling between two strands of web, one connected to the conductor part of the box and the other to Electro, completing the circuit and draining Electro through himself into the power box, which causes Sally to lower to the ground. Electro is fully contained in the box, and Harry helps Spider-Man to his feet in a little, oh, Spider-Man, I'll help you moment. And rather than doing any kind of research into helping or seeing what they can do, they just hear this thing making noise, and Peter Olympic chucks it into the Hudson River, where
Then
the
it
box
blows up.
explodes, and Max fucking dies. And Peter goes, "I hope you're resting in peace now, Max," or something. And it's like, dude, what the fuck? You just killed
What?
him.
You just
You,
straight
there
up
was
killed him. What the fuck is this show?
with Kurt Connors out of commission, you might be the smartest man in New York, and there was so much you could have done, and you actually put a bullet in his head. You killed him.
Straight up, we thought you killed him earlier, but no, you've now double killed him. He
Now
is
I'm
straight up
sure that
dead.
I've put you to peace, Max. Don't come back again, please. The
Spider-Man just
episode
likes to murder people a lot. This show is fucked up.
the episode ends with Harry confessing to Peter that he now does not know what he thinks about Spider-Man, which comes across like way like it is nothing like Harry
Little late to the
Osborn
party,
from the
buddy. Little late
movie.
to the party, buddy.
It's incredible. It's incredible. So we're almost at the end here. We are
Oh my
at
god.
the two-part series finale, Mind Games Part 1, which centers around the Gaines twins, Roxanne and Roland, a brother and sister pair with uncanny mental powers who are being transported in an armored convoy truck when a well-planned traffic accident allows them to murder the driver and escape. Specifically, they dupe one of the handlers with an Elmer Fudd shotgun into just splattering the other one through a window, and we see like blood spray from like a helicopter shot above. It's brutal. They really
Wait.
go there.
The very first thing that happens is they're like setting. They're like in the truck. They're in the prison transport truck. They're like doing exposition about who these two are, and fucking the guard with the Elmer Fudd shotgun immediately looks at what's the girl's name?
Uh, uh,
He
Roxanne.
immediately looks at Roxanne's tits and is like, "Nice
Nice
body on
body.
her." What the
Yeah,
fuck is this show? What the fuck?
it's a fucking horny mess, is what it is.
Why is this in the
The
TV show?
the twins are almost able to escape. That is until Spider-Man appears on the scene and battles their mental abilities and overcomes their brain blasts with his own superhuman willpower. Spider-Man then, after the fact, takes MJ up to the skyline peak of New York to talk after the arrests, and casually pushes her off the building before rescuing her. And she's laughing after the fact. She's screaming like she's being fucking murdered when she's been pushed because Spider-Man just pushed her off a building. But when he grabs her, she's like, oh, but it's like, oh my fucking god, dude, you can't just like do that. That's so fucked up. Why would Spider-Man push a woman off a building?
Straight up, that was incredibly. The note I wrote was, Peter, why did you do that?
It is incredibly out of character.
This show
Uh,
like sucks now. It's so funny.
Later that afternoon, Peter Parker learns that Pterodax, the crime trio comprised of the former KGB agents, has sprung Silver Sable from prison, and they have hostages at a construction site. Spider-Man arrives and dispatches them. After the fact, Indy is waiting at Peter's apartment with MJ, and Peter's like, "Oh, huh? What?" before they confront him with the harsh reality that is the ultimatum of monogamy.
Yeah, straight up, he was almost there to the poly king Peter. We almost had it.
Almost, but alas,
It slipped through our fingers.
it is not meant to be in the new animated series. Peter goes from this emotional chewing out to go sell pics to the Bugle, which is probably the last time in the series he does that. Silver Sable allies herself with Craven the Hunter in a little, meet cute scene between the two of them. Craven has murder on his mind because Spider-Man sent him to the Gulag, and he wants to murder Spider-Man in an alley with a crossbow. That's his motivation.
Okay, Craven, who has not been in this show before.
Yeah, he just has not.
He has not. For a split second there, I thought I had missed an episode, like in the torrent I had downloaded.
No,
I'm like,
thought that too.
Did they forget an episode?
Because I kept seeing him in the opening sequence. I'm like, wait, there hasn't been a Craven episode. What the fuck?
Yeah, like they keep talking about it like you put me in that gulag. Like it's never mentioned before
that
this
just
has
happened before
they
the
just
show started.
Throw it in there.
That happened the day after Norman was buried. Sable,
like, oh, I'd be here now. Duh.
Sable eventually gets tied up with another fucking Coomer brain joke from Craven about this being a fantasy of his. She gets arrested, crying out to Craven that there has to be an alternate route to undoing Spider-Man. Peter meets with MJ in an attempt to reconcile over everything, which culminates in him pulling her aside in an alleyway as Spider-Man to unmask and reveal himself as Peter, which she's like, oh my god, this makes so much sense. Oh, wow, wee, woo, wah. And then, while they kiss, Craven the Hunter interrupts the scene. He manages to use MJ as bait and holds her for a while, taunting Peter and telling him that he wants to watch her suffer, before he stabs her with a poisoned spider dart, killing her in the alleyway.
She's just dead.
And Peter cradles her dying body, and she dies, and he goes, oh no, MJ is dead from a spider dart.
This show's gonna make me go insane.
We go immediately from this to Peter standing at her gravesite, because when someone dies in this show, that's what happens, is you immediately cut to their grave, and it being
And he is the only one at the gravesite. Harry is not there.
He is the only one until an old man starts talking to him. An old man with Stan Lee's voice. This is Frank Elson, but yeah, he's Stan Lee. And he just starts talking to Peter. Hey, don't you love revenge? Don't you wish you could go ape shit? Aren't you tired of being good? Do you want to fucking murder the guy that did this?
Straight
and
up.
Peter's like, wait, how do you know all this? And it doesn't matter.
Who cares? It doesn't matter.
We know it, but Peter doesn't know that the twins have mind tricked him into this state of mind, working on their own scheme of vengeance against Craven, and that MJ is very much alive and in their possession, which is where this first part ends. Meaning, Lex, we are finally at the final episode of Spider-Man, the new animated series.
Nothing matters.
Mind Games Part 2.
None of it matters.
Yeah, if you have some scotch handy, now is the time to open it.
That whole last episode didn't happen. None of it was real.
Yeah, no, it doesn't matter. Fuck you, and thanks for giving us. Your body is physically rejecting this show at this point.
Oh my god, I'm like, my eyes are watering. Oh my god.
The Gaines twins have brain blasted. I didn't write that. Have brain blasted Spider-Man into believing that MJ has died at the hands of Craven the Hunter.
They blasted a nut right into his brain.
Convinced by Frank Elson, a mysterious stranger who hangs out in cemeteries, that the only solace is revenge, Spider-Man now tracks down Craven in order to pay him the identical fate that he inflicted MJ. The twins exposit on the experiments that made them. They're kind of a ripoff of like Magneto's kids. They're kind of Scarlet Witchy in nature with the whole like brain control thing.
Yeah, kind of.
But that's like the beginning and end of it. They really feel like in the way that Turbojet is just Rocket Racer, it just feels like another way to have those characters without having to say it. I don't know. MJ begins to make her escape from the room, still alive. but a mind lizard keeps her
The
from
mind
truly
lizard.
exiting.
The
Still
mind
restrained.
lizard.
She's still restrained. She's not able to leave. The twins are fully in control of the situation. Craven gets his ass beaten badly over the course of his fight with Spider-Man, and notes the lack of quips, which is always a bad sign when you're fighting Spider-Man, if he stops making jokes. Craven gets himself caught in a spider noose. He is straight up about to hang and lynch Craven the Hunter.
Yeah, straight up. That's fucked up. I'd be saying that's fucked up.
Which honestly, like, I don't know that I've seen that before. Spider-Man like try to hang somebody, which is it's fucked up, but like, of course, right? That's like one of the primary things you could do to incapacitate someone if he was that mad. I don't know. He's moments from delivering Craven the Hunter his final blow when he notices that some of his surroundings don't mesh with some of his more recent memories. The ESU, like a sign is still attached to a building that to his recollection should have fallen off and injured Harry recently. Things just aren't as they should be. Combining that with a few of Craven's conflicting syllables and a few of the things he said in the fight, Spider-Man determines that his reality has somehow been tampered with. The question
Somehow.
is, how or who? Peter consults with Indy to track down the warehouse by a church on the seaside that leads him to Frank Elson, the landlord of the building, and the man who was talking to him, was hired by the twins. The Gaines twins are behind everything, Frank coughs up. And when Spider-Man seeks them out to confront them, they are pissed that he didn't kill Craven. Calling Spider-Man like on the phone to lure him in, they demand that he kill Craven or they're going to kill MJ. He shows up instead, fuck you. And during the final confrontation, it looks like Spider-Man is winning as he frees MJ from their grasp. Things take a turn for the worse when the twins use their mental tricks on Peter. He had believed he had the female twin, Roxanne, in his grasp and was choking her. During the choking, she kind of stumbles. He kind of pushes. It's not like super duper clear where all the blame lies, but
it's not
one way or
it's
another.
not 100% clear.
After a tussle, Roxanne falls over the edge of the building onto her back, way down below, seemingly dead. Until Peter turns around and finds both Gaines twins laughing in his face, asking him to look over the edge again. And when Peter looks over the edge, he sees his girlfriend, Indy, who had arrived chasing the story of all of this shit going down. And it's painted pretty clear by a dozen witnesses that Spider-Man threw this woman off a ledge after choking her, and she's now comatose to the point of like near brain death.
Oh my god.
Spider-Man is fucking morose with this.
This show is insane, and like I actually kind of like this twist, but it's fucking nuts.
Yeah, it's way out of left field. I mean, not unexpected. I don't mean to say that because the show has been completely fucking nuts so far, but it's very out of character and out of it's almost as it's as jarring as how like the Gwen Stacy death must have come across to people at the time, I guess.
Yeah. It's
jarring.
I don't even know how to describe how insane I can only describe it as insane.
Spider-Man, there's a ton of anti-Spider-Man public rhetoric going around now. The public sentiment is just Spider-Man fucking sucks. He killed Norman Osborn. He just about tried to kill Indy. This guy fucking sucks. We hate him. Even like J. Jonah Jameson is going on the news like, leave town, fuck off, we hate you. Oh my god,
go fuck yourself.
Just stop, just kill yourself. Oh my god, leave. Peter's like, okay, yeah, but one last thing, and he tracks down the twins to a propane factory. He knocks out the man, and then through a like a car chase sequence, has the lady like crash into an electrical conduit. And just blows them both up. He like actually seeks them out and murders them, which is like the third or fourth murder Spider-Man has committed on this show.
Yeah.
But this one was like on purpose and a calculated act of vengeance, and is like completely like in Spider-Man's code of ethics and like legally indefensible. He tracked these people down and killed them on purpose. Like there's no dancing around that. After this, a spiritless, dejected, and morose Peter Parker tightly packs up his Spider-Man suit with bricks in a suitcase and chucks it into the river, allowing it to sink into the murky depths, and says, "Fuck you, I'm not Spider-Man anymore. Spider-Man is dead. I'm just Peter Parker. Whatever." Credits.
Too bad no one told me that being a superhero is an impossible game to win. Or that the ones closest to me would always suffer the most. Some who hold a grudge against me. And some who tried to give me so much, only to lose everything. I don't want to cause any more pain here. I can't live with that burden any longer. So it's time for me to say goodbye, Spider-Man.
Oh, end of the series.
And that, ladies and gentlemen, is Spider-Man the Animated Series.
The new animated
series.
I can't believe
it was
this
pretty
is
new.
I did not expect to say this going in, but this is more nuts than the spectacular cliffhanger. Fucking ludicrous.
Lex updated me throughout the viewing of like his episodes because I knocked out mine pretty much solidly throughout the week. He texted me like, "Oh hey, I'm on episode 4. This is nuts. Hey, I'm on episode 8. What the fuck?" You know,
I said okay. So
increasingly,
the first thing I said was I just finished episode 4 and I thought the show rocks. And then he's like, and then you said I have about 4 left and I think it's going to kill me. I hate most of it. This is going to be another fun episode. I'm like, I think this might be the first time we fundamentally disagree on something. And then I'm like, just watched episode 7. The show is insane. Finished episode 8. Nutso program.
I think at that point I might have been done already. And in my head, I'm like, oh, Lex. Oh no.
This is like the most depressing ending for a Spider-Man show. And like, obviously they were going to do more shit in the second season, but like, who would want more of this?
Yeah, I can't say I'm itching to. You know, I've said that it'd be a fun thing to touch upon in the future, like project that's crossover related, like Spider-Verse 2 or 3 or whatever. It also would be fine if they never acknowledge this ever again.
I mean, I would be fine with like a revival thing if we got consistent writing, because this doesn't have any. Like, this show is a nightmare.
These models in 4K would be great. You could make this show in fucking Source Filmmaker now.
You could. Before we get even go into our final thoughts, Alex, do you have any fun facts for this nightmare?
I have a pretty concise list of them, yeah. The show was originally conceived as an adaptation of Ultimate Spider-Man, the comic book, but the plans for that changed when Sam Raimi's Spider-Man proved to be such a box office smash. Marvel crafted this as a sequel TV series set during the college years to tide fans over until 2, but then eventually abandoned the continuity, obviously. Since the series was developed for MTV, stories were free of censorship marring kids programming. So not only was this one of the first programs that allowed Spider-Man to punch, it was also the first program that were, on-screen deaths, mild bad language, sexual implications. And from what I've seen, this is still probably the most like adult Spider-Man adaptation. Even outside of like Amazing and stuff. It's very young. It's past young adult themed. It's very much squarely aimed at like MTV youths of the time, older teens and younger 20s.
Absolutely.
Glitches in the computer animation program led to changes in both MJ and Kraven's outfits as opposed to their comic book counterparts. Specifically, MJ was going to have a lot longer hair, and Kraven was going to have his lion mane vest. But the hair like effects just weren't there for like the tendrils of like the tufts of hair and the long hair that would just clip through the bodies. So they gave MJ short hair and just gave Kraven a fucking leather jacket and called it a day.
I actually kind of like the leather jacket that Kraven wears.
Yeah, it's pretty dope. Little cheetah print like armbands on it.
Yeah, and this like I said earlier, I like MJ's redesign. I think they did a good job on it. But yeah.
At the end of her episode, Christina thinks that she's discovered Spider-Man's secret identity, and everyone anxiously awaits her answer, only for her to reveal that it was Ming, the drip den guy, the coffee guy.
Yeah, the coffee guy who shows up later in an episode. I think I don't remember which one it is, but like they're there in the middle of the night and he's still working. Like, what the dedication to the craft, dude.
The guy who voices Ming is Reno Romano, who voiced Spider-Man in Spider-Man Unlimited and the first 2 PlayStation games.
Oh, so, that's fun.
Kind of, yeah, Ming the Drip Den guy is Spider-Man.
He is.
According to the producers, the network frowned on old people, hence why we don't see J. Jonah Jameson that much, and we only see Aunt May in a picture, and we don't see Robbie at all. MTV, that's what I have on paper. They frowned upon old people.
They frowned upon old people.
Kids don't want to see some old fogey. They want to see Spider-Man get his dick sucked and punch some guy in the face. Put it on.
This show is nuts. I don't know what else to say.
Talon was originally supposed to be Black Cat until Eve was hired to do the voice, and MTV demanded she be changed to be closer to the singer. Makes sense to me.
Fair enough.
Lastly, the last little overarching bit of trivia I have is that in the Latin American Spanish dub of the series, the actors who played the characters in the film that voiced Peter Parker, Mary Jane, and Harry in the Raimi film, respectively, Luis Daniel Ramirez, Claudia Mata, and Arturo Mercado Jr. Reprised their roles for the show.
That's cool.
So that's a neat little bit of continuity. And it is all I have as far as trivia for the show.
All right. I guess we can sort of go through our overall thoughts on this program. I'll go first.
Absolutely. Please do.
I said it about 1 million times. This is an insane show. Like I said, first 6 episodes, I liked where they were going. I liked some of the choices they were making. I like the introduction of Indy, new characters. In a way, it sort of almost does all of the stuff that I like from the first Raimi movie without any of the stuff from the second one that I don't. Mm-hmm. But episode 7 just completely jumps the shark and then never looks back. I absolutely completely understand why this was canceled. This is like I said earlier. This is probably the most morbidly fascinating thing I've watched all season. Fuck it, all the entire show, both seasons we've done of this. That includes 77, all this other stuff. I think my overall rating is too weird to live, too rare to die.
Oh yeah. I gotta say, this is a weird little tangent. It's a branch on a fractal, like way down the spiral of Spider-Man media, and it's not talked about, like we've said 1 million times. It's the black sheep of the family, for good reason, I want to say, yeah. But even with that said, I think it's worth a watch. I can actually legitimately say that, just to get a grasp on how little they had an idea of what they were doing at the time, I guess. I can't say I didn't like it, because there are parts of it I liked, and there are parts of it that I still like. I think the fucking, like we said, the score is amazing. I just wish that it had more time to breathe before they got so gutsy with some of the decision making.
Yeah,
there's nothing wrong with being morbid. It's just that they did too much too soon.
This is all in the first season. You should have saved this shit for season 2.
They barely should have had an idea of whether Spidey and Indy were together at the end of the first season, let alone her confessing her love in her introductory episode, and then her being essentially murdered by the end of the first season. It makes no sense.
Yeah, they should have done a thing like what they did with fucking Spectacular, where they have that sort of confession of love at the end of the first season, and then start of the second season, introduce more things, and then have the wacky gonzo cliffhanger.
Yeah, it's too bad that we don't work on this shit, and that we weren't in the biz in 2003.
Hire us, Marvel. We can fix it.
But yeah, I do recommend it. I had fun with it, with the parts that were fun, and I got a lot of exercise running my hands through my fucking hair, going, "What the hell am I looking at?" For the rest of it.
Yeah. All right. This show has melted my brain. Yeah, that's our show. Thank you so much for listening. If you got a question or a comment that you want us to read on next week's episode, you can send it to us right at our email address. That's spideysignalspodcast@gmail.com. I repeat, spideysignalspodcast@gmail.com. Or if you're on Twitter, you can send us a DM there. Our Twitter is @spideysignals. Next week, we're going to try to take a break from this nightmare that we're living in. and talk about some comic books. We're talking about two different stories. We're talking about Back in Black and One More Day. The specifically One More Day is pretty notorious within the Spider-Man community and somewhat has a vague influence on No Way Home. I've never read it. Alex, have you read it?
No.
It's going to be exciting.
I have stayed away just because I it's so infamous. I just haven't had the time to subject myself. I like watching bad movies. I don't love reading bad comics as much.
Because reading requires effort on my part.
Yeah, I know Back in Black is like 4 issues. How many issues is One More Day?
I have no clue. I'm looking this up. Back in Black.
Oh, it looks like it's all 4, so it shouldn't be too crazy to cover both. Okay.
Yeah, it shouldn't be too terrible. So until then, stay responsible. Oh, bye.
Check your Palm Pilots.
Check your fucking Palm Pilots.
Spider-Man.